Title card, up next, Ames City Council. Their pro tem city manager and Ames City Council sit at a curved dais.
Calling to order the March 10th, 2026 meeting of the Ames City Council. Welcome, council members, and for our audience, we are going to be working from an amended agenda. With that, we will begin with our consent agenda. Are there any items that council members wish to pull for separate consideration? Hearing none, we can entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Move consent. Second.
All those, this is roll call, right? Okay, thank you.
Betcher,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Okay, we will now then move on to the public forum part of our agenda. This is the time that's set aside for our community members to comment on things that are not on the agenda. You will have 3 minutes to speak, and we will not be able to respond about your comments, but those would be taken into consideration for future council comments. Is there anyone that desires to speak under public forum tonight? Okay, seeing none, we will close public forum. I do understand that there is someone who may be here to speak under item 49, which is the hearing on rezoning of property located at 1323 Northwestern Avenue. We will move that to this point so that you don't have to wait for item 49 to come up. If you would like to go ahead and address the council now.
Oh, yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
and we're also going to have staff come up
Corey,
For
Kelly.
item 49.
Kelly.
City Attorney and Planning Director approach staff table.
Sorry.
Just to be clear, we're moving item 49 to now?
We are moving item 49 to now. Sorry, I
Okay,
wasn't
so
clear.
This is a public hearing, so you have to open the public hearing.
Okay. So,
Just declaring, yeah.
The staff report first.
But yeah,
Staff
start with
report
staff
first.
and then declare the public hearing.
thank you. Okay, newbie, me. So if you want to hold on just a second, we will allow the staff report and then we'll have open up public forum. Sorry about that.
Good evening. So tonight, item 49, so we're having a public hearing on the rezoning of property owned by the Ames Community School District. It's known as the Ames Center. They purchased this property a few years ago with the intent of investing in its facilities to expand services for the district. The current zoning is residential. The prior operator of the facility, Lutheran Services of Iowa, operated some administrative uses and a school under a special use permit. Ames Community School District is looking to rezone from residential to SGA, which is a special zone for government and airport uses. It's a zone that we've applied to many of the school sites across the city, as well as city facilities. So the SGA, the main benefit to the district is it allows for a little bit broader range of uses because it would allow for any use that's affiliated or related to the school district's operations, whereas the residential zone is more limited to actually schools and not necessarily other types of administrative activities. So with this proposal, staff encouraged the applicant to propose a master plan so there'd be a better understanding of what the intended use of the site would be. So the proposal tonight is to rezone to SGA. It includes a master plan that shows an improvement to the site for parking and circulation and some additional buildings on the site. And city staff has been able to look at this with the applicant, and we support the proposal, which would show phased improvements over time. They're not obligated to make all the improvements at once. It'd be at the pace of the district to come forward then with individual administrative site plans to make the specific improvements. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Kelly, we received an email about this item that had concerns about how this rezoning may eventually impact I believe, the sewer system and drainage in the area. And I'm wondering if you could say anything about at what point those concerns might enter the discussion. Is that something that we should be considering tonight with this rezoning, or is that something that would be taken into consideration at a later step in the process?
So the concerns are from a property owner on Ridgewood, which is west of the tracks. I believe they're to the northwest of this site. The concerns that were given to us before the Planning and Zoning Commission, which then were resent to the council, talk about existing drainage concerns and groundwater infiltration issues. From discussion with our public works staff, they didn't feel that there was a condition right now that was related to this project. Might be existing conditions or issues with Bethesda Lutheran that aren't really relevant to the school district. With that said, as development occurs on the school district property, as they redevelop, there will be Chapter 5B, which is our stormwater management requirements, will be applied to the project. They have a 1 acre threshold of when they would have to start to treat the new surfaces and the new areas, but that includes water quality and some detention as well. So our public works staff didn't believe there was anything identifiable at this time that could relate to the concern. And we believe that our normal stormwater practices would manage the water and control its release. And as far as we can tell at this point, water would likely release south, and this property is to the north. So we weren't really convinced that there was something at this point that we knew of that would be related to this project.
Thank you.
Kelly, could you put the master plan exhibit up? I think it'd be helpful for people to see what we're looking at. I'm pretty excited about the development, and hopefully we'll get a chance to hear from the school about how this is going to help them in their mission to help our kids. So can you give just sort of an overview, anything that you think would be important for us to know?
I'd probably let the applicant talk about that.
Sure.
For us, it was really about the organization of the site,
Okay.
and not so much about exactly what was proposed within each of the buildings. So the main differences that you'll note from existing conditions is they recently demolished this building right here on Northwestern. There's a small parking lot that's still there now. Ultimately, that parking lot and driveway go away when they build a normal drop-off loop for the school. And then the main improvement is to add this driveway up north, so you have through circulation through the site. And then there's some other building and site alterations that go with that, but I think the applicant could probably explain them better.
Sure. Great. Thank you.
Are there any other questions from council or comments? Then we will open public forum.
Not public.
Hearing, I'm sorry, open the public hearing.
Melissa Goodwin approaches the podium to address council.
All right, good evening. I am Melissa Goodwin. I'm an architect and was the project manager on this master planning project. And on behalf of the Ames School District, submitted the rezoning application. And I will let Superintendent Grimes speak to some of the larger intent from the school district on this project. But just as a beginning point, I think the school district really was inspired to, or is inspired to, create a centerpiece for the Ames community that will, create multi-purpose spaces that support student services, administrative needs, as well as community partnerships, and provide resources for the adjacent neighborhood as well. We received in some of our feedback from staff, received questions about some of the phasing. And I think based on some of the priorities that we heard from the school district, the first phase would likely be the through driveway that you see that extends out to the northeast off of Northwestern, and would also potentially or would also likely consist of that main parking lot just south of the existing Ames Center building. That way that drop-off loop can get established. The additional phases, which would include building renovations, new construction, additional parking areas, and outdoor amenities, would be dependent upon available funding, but could theoretically be completed in any order. And also to speak to the question about stormwater drainage, The subsurface and groundwater studies were not part of the project. However, stormwater management was an important consideration in the development of the overall plan. We understood that we're putting quite a bit more, or this plan proposes quite a bit more hard surfaces than what is there currently. One of the goals was to try to maintain as much green space as possible. But the plan as shown does account for surface drainage and grading for the site as required by code. The proposed hard surface improvements would be properly managed to meet stormwater runoff code requirements. And additionally, the intent is to be efficient with any improvements that happen on site. So as, even if the initial phases, as they get completed, any stormwater or storm sewer improvements that would be added to the site would be sized appropriately to accommodate all phases so that you're not having to go back and redo things as you kind of expand your breadth of hard surface. The existing detention pond at the south end of the site can accommodate the stormwater as required by code with little to no expansion required. Though if the size of the detention pond does need to be increased, there is room to do so. And I think we might show that a little bit kind of the dog leg towards the north. I think where that existing parking lot is now that Kelly mentioned. And I think, beyond, as Kelly mentioned, that I think, or in what was in perhaps your packet of materials was that this, how this plan kind of aligns and rezoning this site aligns with the Ames 2040 comprehensive plan. I believe that plan already identifies this site as civic in nature. And so rezoning, we believe would just bring it into further compliance with that land use plan and for the community. It also would mean the site is zoned like other Ames Community School District owned properties, and it would provide the most flexibility for the school district as they work to redevelop the property and realize the community focused vision of the master plan. So that is all that I have, but I'm willing to take any questions if you have any.
I'm curious what a traffic garden is. I've never heard that term before.
Okay, with that, I'll let Superintendent.
Sounds like you're growing cars
We are.
or something.
So
Yes.
Scott Grimes, Superintendent of Ames Community School District. First, want to thank you for the opportunity to speak on a great endeavor that we're looking at for the Ames Community School District, and also the partnership that we have had with the city and the ongoing support that I believe that school districts and a city should work jointly on beautification and also attraction, in what ways we can retain the population as well as the educational aspects of the community. Within this site, when first walking and toured upon being hired, most of the buildings on this site were going to be torn down. When I walked through my first initial hiring, I saw value in the history. I saw value in the buildings in the site, and also saw a benefit that could be used for the neighborhood as well. Within that planning, we did identify some buildings that we would like to stay and repurpose. The Island Building, for example, I just feel it has some history in the community, has a nice setup, so I always like to repurpose our buildings versus tearing them all down. The site overall is actually looking at 3 phases. It's one for what is the academic purposes that we have within that site. So we have the Ames Center, which does house some of our therapeutic classrooms. And it also houses our homeschool assistance program. So this is the first time we've had a location to support our students that are not on site but homeschooled. We also see that as a training facility and also opportunity for our staff to go through staff development. Within that site also, we do know we have the gymnasium, which at first glance was told to tear it down or repurpose into like a tech center. I do find value in that. And I think one of the conversations I've had with the city is where are some open spaces that we can have people rent or check out for pickleball or other things like that. So I hate to tear down sizes of buildings that are similar to that. This is not a full-size gym. It's not air conditioned at this point, but we are looking at repurposing that gymnasium to be something that possibly the community can check out as well as the school district can use during the school day. We do have site for possible plans for a future building to the north, just creating that space, and then also creating a centralized location for efficiencies of our Buildings and Grounds building, which is located towards the east side of the community, as well as our technology. So we feel like if we could centralize some of the storage, we'd be more efficient with our travel and use of space, and also providing, I could say, efficiency for our fuel as well. Also, we knew that there was congestion. There's always congestion around schools, and anytime you put two entrance and exits by the same, I would say Northwestern and 13th Street are high traffic positions and buildings or roads. And ultimate goal is to try to, and I think that was with the city as well, is how can we change traffic flow on the site, create less backup on Northwestern, and I think even reducing parking on Northwestern. We did meet with a neighboring community members with an earlier meeting. They appreciated everything about the plan. They appreciated the conversation they had up front. Their only concern is whether the basketball hoop is going to be there or not. But we do have plans to actually have a basketball hoop in that area. The ultimate goal also, as you can see, there's walking paths or trails within that area. They're actually moved off side of the road, so it's more safe for students as well as kids and their parents. The ultimate goal on the little spots is for activity or events for students or for families to engage with their students or their children. And then also to have that not centrally located in one area, so that it forces the kids to actually move from activity to activity, and the parents don't feel like they're just sitting there and watching their kid on the jungle gym, but we're actually moving them through the system. We're getting to the traffic garden. The traffic garden itself, this is a place where we would have, in a sense, all the traffic signs, stops, locations, kind of a drive experience, so that students can learn traffic skills on their bikes, tricycles. It has stop signs and stop crosswalks, and kind of an area for families to practice. I think it's also an opportunity where we can work with our public law enforcement and do some joint activities for safety or bike helmet awareness down the road. We're also looking at beautifying the access point up to the public garden or the community garden that we have on that site. I don't even know who owns the garden, but I know they rent it from us for like $1 a year. But I do know that that is access, and we want to make sure that they have access. We're planning to put water up there, cleaning table, and make that more of an attractable garden center than one that looks like, comes and goes depending on the seasons. That's the highlights of it. I believe the ultimate goal is to create a centralized location for the community to be able to access, as well as the school within that. We are looking at demoing the inside of the Odland building, so we are going to look at gutting that just to take everything out of it so we can preserve it longer. Anytime you leave drywall and everything up into a building, it actually deteriorates faster if it's not in use. So we are actually gutting that, taking it down to the studs, so that we can preserve that for longer until we do have funding for it. The ultimate goal for the Odland building is to actually have a site for some of our community, for example, our Education Foundation, as well as maybe our Alliance, to have a place that they can locate and serve, and then also have it be a checkout or a community area that can be checked out for birthday parties or whatever events they'd like, graduation parties within those areas. I can go on forever, but thank you.
I have just two really
Oh,
small
yeah.
questions. So tell us a little bit more. I'm intrigued with the outdoor classroom. I don't know if people can see this in the northwest corner of the plan. Give us a little sense of what that's involving.
Typically, your outdoor classrooms are set up for a nature environment or a place that you can take your class out and do some external work with, or getting them out of the classroom setting, depending on the season. Outdoor classrooms have a lot of different levels of ability when it comes down to outdoor classrooms. Some outdoor classrooms are the arts level, so they maybe have a seating or stadium where they're able to perform and do one-act plays in. Another type of outdoor classroom is more of your organic or environmental outdoor classroom. So it's really in the nature. This is probably more of your environmental, or a place that we can just have students go out and get out of their seats.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else who was wishing to speak during the public hearing on item number 49, which is the hearing on rezoning of property located at 1323 Northwestern Avenue from residential low density RL to Government Airport District SGA with a master plan. I will call the hearing closed then. And is there a motion for the first reading of the ordinance?
Hey, one question for Kelly.
Oh.
Kelly, just as a minor point, our friends with the railroad sometimes have limitations on how close things can be built to the railroad. Are there any concerns with respect to it looks like the plan even has a trail that looks getting pretty close to the railroad. Any concerns there?
Not that I'm aware of. I mean, obviously they would stay out of the railroad right of way, but other than that, I don't know any particular concern that they would have.
Okay, all right. Thanks.
Any other questions?
No, but I was going to move alternative 1 to approve on first reading.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. A roll call.
Junk. Aye. Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Darton.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. All right. Thank you for allowing that deviation for helping me through it. Okay. All right, then we will now return back to number 32 under Human Resources, the discussion on city attorney job description and hiring timeline. And I believe there's been some interest in perhaps delaying this.
Mayor Pro Tem, I would move that we push this discussion back 2 weeks to allow us to visit about this when Mayor Hale is returned and Amber is back.
I'll second.
Okay. Moved and seconded. Have we, Mark, done what needs to be done in order to move this? Okay. All right. It's been moved and seconded to move this on to the March 24th agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right, we'll move on to item number 33 under legal discussion on letter to legislators regarding HF 2541. And if Mark will come up and give us some background and also some guidance on what our options might be at this point.
Thank you. As you know, when the council passed the ordinance on February 10th that added gender identity as a protected class under the Civil Rights Act, the legislature had just started considering legislation that would prohibit cities from, defining protected classes beyond what the state law does. So we're limited to what the state law does, the standard, race, sex, religion, national origin, sexual orientation. So, so the council passed that ordinance on February 10th, and then the bill has continued to move. At the last meeting, there was a motion to put it on the agenda to consider drafting a letter to send to the Ames area legislators, just stating the council's opposition to this state legislation. And a couple communities in the Des Moines Metro had done that, Windsor Heights and Urbandale. And so anyway, so we put this on the agenda to do that. And in the meantime, they sped things up in the legislature. Instead of considering the House File 2541, they attached that language as an amendment to a Senate bill. And that's what was the Senate File 579. And then, so yesterday, Senate File 579 with the new language that, would prohibit cities from having an expanded civil rights ordinance, that passed the Iowa Senate. And then, of course, it goes to the governor after that. So I was going to come to you tonight and say, well, either two things. One, it's passed the legislature, so maybe it's moot, or you could decide to send a letter to the governor, except I understand about 4 o'clock today, the governor signed the bill. And I will tell you, after years of working around the legislature, and I worked there as a staff member and a lobbyist, that it's intentional that they move it this fast. I mean, it takes usually 3 or 4 days for it to get down to the governor's office and the governor to sign it. So this was moved along. I'm pretty sure intentionally, quickly. So anyway, so the governor has signed it now, and it becomes effective immediately according to the terms of the bill. So as of right now, we can no longer enforce the gender identity protection that you all passed a month ago tonight. So at this point, I think the question of sending a letter is probably moot, and because it's over. But, so that'd be, I guess, my recommendation, unless you want to just send a letter for general purposes. But I mean, it's over. It's done at this point. So.
Any comments or discussion?
Well, I think it's unfortunate, and I think it's a sad state of things, but it doesn't surprise me, I guess, either. I think what we intended to say, though, has been said. So I feel like, yeah, the letter wouldn't help any, and I think we made our statement. So
I would just say that I wish that the legislature would allow municipal governance to occur at the local level, and that they not preempt our ability to exercise home rule. Because this is a bill, or now it's a law, that preempts our ability to apply stricter guidelines than what the state allows. And that is, in essence, our ability to do what we think is best for our community, and let every other community do what they think is best for their communities within the guidelines provided at the state level. And so I would just say that I prefer to be on record as supporting home rule and acknowledging that this is not home rule, and that the state is, I would say, usurping our powers as elected officials in our community.
Any other comments, or is someone interested in proposing a motion? No, not at this time.
Well, Mark, procedurally, we've had this happen before when our ordinances have been inconsistent with a state statute. Could you remind us what our next steps are?
Well, we have to stop enforcing the gender identity ordinance that was recently passed. I'll be coming back to the council with a memo very quickly that will, outline your options. I mean, typically we would repeal the ordinance now that it conflicts with state law. Council could always choose to leave it on the books but I think sometimes that's, to make a statement, but sometimes I think that's misleading to people, because then they look in the code and they see it and we can't enforce it anymore. So probably my recommendation will be for the council to repeal that ordinance.
Is that something you would prefer us to wait on to a later point, or is that something we should take action on tonight?
I'll have a memo by the next council meeting.
Okay.
And yeah. So.
Mark, do you know if this law now means that the discussion of local civil rights commissions is done? The state
not
was
sure what you mean.
looking at changing the way local civil rights commissions operate and the requirements for running cases through the Iowa.
There were some changes like that, and I'd prefer to have more time to read it to, again, I'll include in my memo to you, like what those changes are. One change is that I'll say the current law, or before today, was that any city that was 29,000 people or greater was required to have a local civil rights commission. The legislature has now made that optional. So the city no longer has to have a local civil rights commission. But there are some other changes in terms of, like if the local commission doesn't deal with a complaint within a year, that it has to be forwarded to the state Office of Civil Rights. And if this Ames Human Rights Commission receives a complaint that's against a local government entity, whether that be us or another local government entity, that we have to forward that to the state. And I don't think either of those are unreasonable. They're just kind of tweaks to the law, but I presume there were some issues that caused them to want to address those. So, but I'll be reading the entire bill and kind of doing a summary of it and sending it out.
Okay.
Thanks.
And Mark, we don't need to direct you for that?
No,
You don't
I'll
need
do
what
it.
is needed?
I'll do it. Yeah. You'll have it by next council meeting. So,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, Mark.
Yep.
Okay, under Public Works, we will move on to item number 34, Residential Curbside Recycling Program.
Public Works team approaches staff table with presentation on screen.
Hi, good evening, Council. We are back with residential curbside recycling. So as you know, at the last meeting, we went over some details about the program, background, how we got here, and then asked to delay the final decision for 2 weeks to give a chance for some more public input, some more outreach and education about the program. So we're back here tonight asking for award of that 5-year contract for the hauler that would service the curbside program, and then an amendment to the municipal code that would allow us to charge a fee for the program as well. So I'll go back through as a review for anybody that's new, kind of a condensed version of what we did at the last meeting about the program. So what brought us here is this transition from waste to energy to the R3C, or to the transfer station model, recognizing that with the closure of the waste to energy plant that and the importance of diverting that waste from the landfill, that a program like this was going to be necessary. Lots of economic, environmental, regulatory, technical, lots of reasons to go ahead with a program like this to, like I said, keep as much waste as we can out of that landfill. So how we got here, it started in fall of 2025 with some reasoning about the need behind a curbside recycling program, a public survey, getting input from our residents about how a program like that could be structured, and then a couple conversations here at council about key aspects of the program where we were provided guidance, and then also ultimately guidance to issue that request for proposals in December. So in that RFP, we're seeking a partner that would service almost 14,000 residences here in town as part of the program for every other week service, and that includes single-family homes and multifamily homes up to 4 units. So these are all of the housing units in town that could be easily serviced curbside with that wheeled 96-gallon cart. So the vendor will furnish those carts and deliver them to all the residences here in June, and then start servicing those in July. We're looking for a 5-year term for the contract, and then for the carts, it's been structured so that the cost for the carts are incorporated there in the contract, and then the city would assume ownership of those carts after the 5 years, so they would stay in place regardless of any other changes, future changes to the program. And then we're also looking for a partner to help us monitor that contamination. That'll be important for the program going forward, monitoring and managing that contamination in the recycling stream, and then also requested pricing for our resource recovery system partners around the county to provide that as an option to those partners if they should choose to move forward with curbside recycling under a similar structure. So it was a competitive RFP process. A team of staff evaluated 5 proposals and conducted 3 interviews, and ultimately recommending Aspen Waste Systems of Iowa for the contract for several reasons that are listed here. Mainly the pricing was important. They had very competitive pricing, and then also just in general, their willingness to work with the city and work with our customers to build the kind of program that we wanted to see. So for that pricing, we're at $7.75 per month per household. So that includes some financial modeling, taking into account the cost for the hauler contract, and then also the cost for the R3C. Once that's operational, that's where the material will go before it's then passed on to a processing facility. That's where the disposal costs will come into that processing facility that will accept the material, sort it out using their equipment, and then further distribute that out to manufacturers and recyclers that will use that and build it into new materials. And also a little bit there for city administration, customer service, maintaining a program fund that would mitigate some of the risk from the variables that are listed there, variations in fuel price and recycling markets, and as we'll talk about later tonight, in the R3C construction bids as well. So that fee would be effective on July 1st of this year and would apply to all eligible customers. So a lot of the costs here on the right are fixed costs, and you would be able to opt out of having a bin, but you would be assessed that charge, $7.75, whether or not you choose to participate in the program. All right, and we would evaluate these every year, like the other utilities, evaluate that fee. Our goal through the financial modeling is to keep that consistent through the 5 years. And then a little bit on education and outreach. So we've been out there in the community at events, using all of our digital tools that we have through city side, mailing the utility bill inserts, email newsletters, and we'll continue to do that and kind of ramp it up here over the next few months to really get the word out about the program, including a postcard mailer to all the eligible customers as we get closer. And then the all-important card color voting, that'll close on Friday. So if you have not got your vote in for the card color, you still have a chance. We'll come out with some more information about that next week. So as we said, over the last couple of weeks, we did receive some public input and wanted to address a couple of the primary concerns that residents had kind of up front here. So one of those concerns was that structure that I mentioned, that everyone pays the fee. Even if you opt out and choose to not participate, you would still be assessed that fee. And there are a few reasons why it was structured that way. So the contract with the vendor, they'll be paid for all eligible customers, whether they're using the program or not. And that's a very standard way to do it, to structure these contracts. So like I said, a lot of the costs will be fixed. And the reason for structuring it like that is that if we were to allow people to opt out of the fee, then we would have to make some assumptions, some guesses really about how many people would do that. And that would translate to some risk to the program, not knowing how many carts are going to be used and how much material we're going to be getting in. So that risk would translate to increased prices for those who are participating in the program. And then ultimately, the goal of the program is to divert as much waste from the landfill as we can. And structuring it this way, where you pay whether you use it or not, will result in the most waste diversion. And that's something that we know from looking at national studies that were done, speaking with other communities that have recycling programs, something that we can do to best align with that goal of waste diversion. And then a third reason is that it's more economical. It's cheaper to recycle something than it is to haul it to Carroll County over to the landfill. It's cheaper to do that. And then it's also cheaper if we keep our diversion rates higher, then we would mitigate any further increases in that DNR fee that will go up as a result of that landfilling. And then the other major concern that we heard was around the size of the recycling cart. And we understand the carts are big and that there might be a challenge to find somewhere to store those. So we have a diagram here kind of comparing the sizes between the 65 and the 96 gallon cart. The 96 is what we elected to go with. Through hearing public input from the survey in the fall, we did have a meaningful discussion about cart size in November with council, where the decision was made to go with the uniform 96 gallon cart. And that was because, well, having multiple cart sizes would increase the cost and increase the complexity of the program. So it's cheaper to just order uniform, all the same carts. It would be a little bit more expensive to order two different sizes of carts and then add that complexity and that administrative burden to coordinate this size goes to this house and coordinate that delivery of different sizes of carts. And then also looking ahead, the larger carts leave room for expanded recycling in the future. So we hope to, whether it's a year or further down the road, be able to accept additional material in the recycling stream. And then also with manufacturers and industries in general shifting towards using more recyclable materials, the larger carts leave room for those additional materials down the road, because carts are going to be out there for 10 to 15 years. So there's a little bit more long-term thinking there. And that is something that we don't want to fully close the door on. We'll continue to evaluate continuous improvement for the program. And then that's something that we could, if we continue to hear it from residents, could consider at a later date, a year or two down the road, having those smaller bins available. And as far as changes to the municipal code, there would be 4 different fees that would be added there. So there's the $7.75 monthly fee for all eligible customers. And then if you want an additional cart, this is optional. If you want 2, 3, or 4 additional carts, you could do that and pay $5 per cart per month. And then if you forget to set out your cart and you don't want to wait 2 weeks for the truck to come back and service your address, you could pay $15 to have that truck return and service your address as a late set out return fee. And then for a replacement cart, if you are at fault for damaging your cart that needs to be replaced, then we would charge you that at cost. Those are about $60. All right, so it's for those reasons that we are recommending alternative 1. So that would award the 5-year contract to Aspen Waste Systems of Iowa and amend that Appendix F of the municipal code effective July 1st. And we're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for staff?
I don't have a question, but I know other people have asked this. And one of the questions that has come up is, well, if we're recycling so much, we're not going to be able to fill our waste bins. And my response to that has been, that's great. Then you can not have that service and you'll only be paying the $7.75 instead of that and your waste service. Is that the kind of response we should be giving to that complaint about this? Or is there a better one?
Yeah, we've had a similar response. Some of the trash haulers will allow you to get a smaller bin for trash. And then we also accept trash for drop off at Resource Recovery and at the new R3C. So you could cease your curbside service and bring the trash to us there for drop off.
I gave the same suggestion to someone too, actually, and I thought that was an interesting thought. So the person was saying, well, hey, but I'll take my recycling myself to Resource Recovery because I don't have a spot for another bin. And I said, well, same thing. If you're recycling more, you'll have less trash. You could just get rid of that bin and then take your trash there. And so I think that it will just take time for folks to think through some of those things. And I will say to anybody who's watching, like, I recognize that this is a change and that there's going to be a learning curve and it's going to be hard. It'll be challenging. We're not trying to minimize the impact too on folks who already have a hard time making ends meet, right? That it will be another bill, right? That those things are, we're cognizant of those. But I think over time, people will learn this system and will come to appreciate it. And it is, I think, the right thing to do for sustainability, both environmental and fiscal, really. So anyway, thank you for the staff who've worked so hard to get us to this point, to appreciate all the work that you've done. So,
Could you speak to the issue of why this needs to be a uniform? And I agree with this. So I'm not asking this because I don't agree. I agree with it, but I think it's helpful just to clarify that it's not like a subscription basis, that we're going to make this a uniform expectation.
Yeah, we did, like I mentioned this in the conversations in November, lay out a few options for that. So the options were to either make it universal or to have it be strictly opt-in or to just have the drop-off facility. And those two options are kind of what we have in place right now. Like, there are haulers in town that offer voluntary service, and we do offer the drop-off recycling. And you can look at the diversion rates that we see right now, and they're very low. So especially with the transition away from waste to energy, in order to achieve those diversion, it's really about that, increasing that participation in the diversion. And helping with the overall cost of waste management here in the community.
Well, and I'll see you and I'll raise you one. I don't know how you could administer a program like this that was totally opt-in. And then Ames is a very transitory community. We have people coming and going. And so being able to build a business model, one has to have a certain expectation of the revenues coming in. I frankly think it would be a higher price for all of us if we had an opt-in approach. So I'm very supportive of the thought that went into this.
Could you say something about those people who were concerned that they might be somewhat mobility impaired and not able to get their recycling receptacles down to the curb?
Yeah, we'll offer a house side service, so you have to request that from us. But if you do need that, then Aspen will walk up and service that from your house or some accessible place down to the truck.
We had a conversation with the representatives from Aspen after the last council meeting where this was initially introduced, and they were going to look into the possibility of taking their existing customer records, because they have a fairly large market share in Ames already. The existing customers who receive trash service from Aspen, who are signed up for curbside or for house side service, taking that and automatically applying it to the recycling customer list as well. So hopefully through an effort like that, if they're able to do it, that would catch quite a few of the folks who would need that service.
One question I thought of too was about, so we had asked the question about, like, this will be on a person's utility bill. And we do have assistance programs for certain parts of utility bills. So we have like the project share for like the electric portion of a utility bill where people can make a donation that then could go to offset someone else's bill. Anyway, I was wondering if maybe over time, and I don't know if this is a question for now or we just keep it in our heads for when it comes up, but to have a similar maybe program for this where someone could make a donation to Project Recycle, and that could go to help offset a lower income person's fee for this. Anyway, it would have to be kind of administered separately. So I don't know if that's even a possibility, but just a thought I had about how we might mitigate, the impact for some of the folks who might feel it the most. So.
Good idea.
Any other questions? Then I will open up public comment. Looks like Andrea, maybe Giles, I'm sorry. Okay. Andrew, I really.
Online so you wouldn't have to read my terrible
I'm sorry.
down,
Thank
so,
you for your patience.
All right, my name is Andrew Giles, and I think a common theme I heard when you guys were talking about this recycling program is it seems there's concern about participation in it. And so I guess I'm here to encourage you to pursue kind of a next gen approach to recycling in town here that would actually take that, to 100%. I've brought some handouts. It was unclear to me what the rules on passing you guys handouts are, so I can
Give them to Taylor and she'll give them to us.
There's some other communities in the United States that are handling recycling in this manner, and there's some companies that are doing that in a more kind of innovative approach. And I think for something like this is kind of a big it's a big change for our community. And I've seen this kind of go through. I've lived overseas for a bit where they went through a recycling program, and when it doesn't pan out correctly, you can get problems like rat infestations and stuff like that. So I think one of the concerns that I have from what you guys mentioned was the frequency in which you're picking up recycling. I think 2 weeks is probably not frequent enough. But it also sounds like you guys have spent a lot more time thinking about this than I have. So, and I think that's all I had to say, really. I just wanted to kind of come here and voice that concern and sort of encourage you to look at some other innovative approaches.
Okay.
And I also wanted to thank you for the time you guys invest in our community. I appreciate that. I know you guys all have other jobs. So,
All right.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, we could take the handouts up here if you like. Yeah. No, thanks.
Thank you.
Was there anyone else that wanted to speak on this issue during public comment? If you'll state your name and Try to keep it around 3 minutes.
Okay, yep. Caitlin Leon, longtime Ames resident. You guys probably seen me here before in support of everything with the recycling program and the end to waste energy. So I did want to come and voice my support because I know there's been a lot of probably pushback or people that have concerns about the increase in their bill. And then also having that requirement that they have to pay it. So I think ultimately we've been really kind of ignorant for a long time about where our waste goes. It's been a global issue. And I think now that the US has not had the means to be able to send it to other countries for recycling, we're going to have to find a reckoning with our own waste. And it's going to be closer to our communities. And it's going to mean we're going to have to come together and find ways to divert as much as we can from those landfills. So I would ask the people that don't like this program or are concerned about paying for it if they would rather see our landfills full. Because ultimately that's our goal here is we're trying to reduce the amount of waste that is going into landfills so that we can reuse some of these products that otherwise can be recycled. So I'm in support of it. I think there's a lot of cost benefits to the acceptance of the recycling program. And I think it's inevitable that it will cause a lot of cost savings for residents, but I think it's a little bit unknown still because we haven't had the end to waste energy yet, but we know that the electric utility has been subsidizing the waste stream for a good amount, or maybe it's the other way around. They're connected. And so there's a lot of savings, I think, on the back end that residents will see in those electric bills, even though we're going to have this extra charge. So not only that, but the roadways, if we have one single hauler that's doing all the curbside biweekly, that takes out all of the people that have opted in with different providers in the community. And so that's less wear on our streets, which means less that we have to pay as residents to fix those streets. And then in general, I do like that there is accessibility to individuals with disabilities or our aging community here in Ames, because ultimately we do want this to be accessible to everybody. And hopefully this is just the first phase, but hopefully down the road, we'll be able to do more multi-use units and things like that, kind of expand a little bit more. So, but I think this is a step in the right direction. I appreciate everything that you guys have all put into this. I know that with any change, there's always concerns, but I think ultimately, again, we have been living a very kind of bougie life and not really thinking about our waste. And we really do need to be thinking about it now. So thank you guys.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else under public comment?
Jerry Neal, 916 Ridgewood. Boy, I don't know if I want to follow Caitlin or not. that was pretty well spoken. But I'm taking this opportunity also to speak in favor and support of this new recycling program that we are embarking on. The citywide single stream recycling, of course, has this big positive of convenience, and that's proved to work in other places. And that will hit Ames's big need, which is kind of to divert our stuff and reduce our overall landfill needs. And I want to recognize, along with many people, yeah, we have had options for voluntary multi-stream recycling here in Ames, and I do it, as do a lot of other people in town. However, although it's a 100% commitment by those of us who are doing it, it really barely registers against the volumes of city trash that we're generating here. And we have to reduce those volumes because we aren't burning it and nobody else wants it. I wanted to comment a little bit on the line item cost for the program on the utility bills, which has failed to thrill a lot of folks. And I would say that including me, when I first saw it. But it did get me to looking at what is it currently costing the city in electric and waste management departments and how they function. And it's something that we've never seen aggregated before on our bill as an individual item. So nobody has anything to compare that to. And you can see this nice little breakdown, but you didn't have that knowledge of, well, we were already paying for this in these amounts before, but in these other items. So I feel like maybe we should have, because it's real money. So I do think this is the way to go financially for the city. It makes economic sense. And I have a concern that I kind of want to bring up about how we're fully successful with the program. The primary benefit of having the multi-stream is, that's what we've had, is that you get a higher quality of your recycled materials. And that's worth money. So higher quality recycling, it's worth money. The offsetting risk with where we're going with the single, and that's a big one, is something that online they're calling over-recycling, which basically means contamination. And it just means that people, even the well-meaning people, are kind of like conveniently throwing everything into the recycling bin. Until that, what happens with that is you get lower quality recyclables, and there's an increased chance that the whole thing can go kick-a-boodle into the landfill, which we're trying to get away from, right? And I don't think that's where we want to go. And right now, I think the thinking on that is kind of with Aspen. Now, these guys need to kind of monitor that stuff and let us know what's happening. But I would suggest that it's really smarter and better to focus on that now. What goes in, what goes out, before we deploy the very first bin, because it's going to be a lot easier to tackle it that way than to try to change it later. However, I think that staff has a lot on their plates before now and July 1st, and they're just going to have to assume that this is going to work out, and Aspen can kind of take care of it. So our education efforts that we have planned are pretty much limited to what we can just generate with what we know from the city. You know, the handouts and newsletters and city side and things like that. But what is that missing? It's missing the public voice. So I think that we can, and we should, pursue something that provides something that's accessible and engaging in terms of communication. And things that I think that would do that include stickers and videos and posters and programs, music, other things. And the way we do that is we source it using a call through our sustainability grants program, area arts programs, environmental science class projects at all levels of education, civic and church initiatives. So we can do a call, and I personally think a little bit of a slight bent towards humor is useful. But these are avenues that we can use now, and we can solicit that public voice to help us learn how to talk about this in a way that effectively will communicate the kind of changes we want to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else under public comment? Okay, I'll close public comment. Any other comments or questions from council?
I like the comments tonight. Thanks, Andrew and Caitlin and Jerry. A point to Andrew's comments. Whenever we pursue anything like this that is so wide sweeping, let's just assume that there are going to be things that a year from now we'll look back on and say, we should do something different. So this is sort of our best efforts. And I think that government needs to have an element of humility when in undertaking these kind of projects. And I fully expect there is as much thought has gone into this. I think that we'll continue to improve, but I think it's a phenomenal start, and just really admire the work of our staff to get us here.
I'd move alternative 1.
Second.
Alternative 1.
Do you want me to read it?
A is the resolution approving 5-year contract for residential curbside recycling collection with Aspen Waste Systems of Iowa Incorporated of Ames, Iowa. It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Junk. Aye.
Do you want a
And then
separate
separate motion for 1B, resolution amending Appendix F of Municipal Code to incorporate fees related to curbside recycling.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Junk. Aye. Rollins.
Aye. Thank you all.
Thank you.
More fun ahead. Okay, we will move on to item 35, request from City of Maxwell to withdraw from Resource Recovery System 28E Intergovernmental Agreement. And only one of you left. Okay, go ahead.
so far.
So far.
So the resource recovery system is a partnership that is made up of 13 separate partners plus the City of Ames. We have, as we've been working towards the development of the resource recovery and recycling campus, asked the partners whether they would be willing to extend the date of that partnership to go 20 years beyond when we anticipate opening the Resource Recovery and Recycling Campus. During that process, we've had a lot of conversations with the different partnering organizations and governments. And we recently received a letter from the City of Maxwell requesting that it be released from the resource recovery system. Maxwell has identified that it is anticipating joining the waste management planning area that includes Marshall County. Maxwell is also served entirely by a single hauler with a citywide contract. So therefore, we believe it would be very straightforward for the waste in Maxwell to be discreetly taken from Maxwell and hauled to the Marshall County area for disposal. This does result in a bit of a reduction in our anticipated revenues because Maxwell, along with the other communities that participate in the system and the City of Ames itself, all contribute a per capita fee of $10.50 annually to support the operations of the system. However, there are also some offsetting reductions in expenses that we pay on a per capita basis and on the basis of the amount of tonnage that we receive. So therefore, city staff doesn't believe that it would present any type of challenge for our operations, certainly, to approve the withdrawal of Maxwell from the system. So we've drafted an amendment to the 2080 agreement that exists that would release Maxwell by June 30th of this year. And we're happy to answer any questions the council might have.
Any questions from council?
Yeah, Brian, so the agreement is began in July of 2014 and continues 20 years. And as I look at this, and maybe I'm missing it, but is there a provision that allows Maxwell a legal right to opt out of this agreement?
Only if mutually agreed.
So they can't give like 30 days or 60 days notice to say, we don't want to do this anymore.
Correct. So we're amending the agreement to effectuate its termination.
Right. So they're requesting this, and
Yes.
we don't have to go along with this. We could
Correct.
take an approach where we say, no, we're counting on this, and so we need you to stay on board.
Right. If the council was to do that, then the existing agreement runs through the year 2034.
Right. And my starting point is if someone doesn't want to go to prom, then they should go to prom with someone else, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you mentioned, though, that there are how many total partners in, you said 16?
There's 13 plus the city.
So 13. And so let's play this out just for the sake of discussion. If other cities said, hey, look, we have other opportunities to go to prom with someone else, and City of Ames let Maxwell out, that was pretty easy. Are there any challenges from the modeling that we've done that says that at some point there's a tipping point where that becomes a problem?
It may depend on the number of partners that leave, if that was to be the case. The City of Ames and Iowa State are the largest contributors towards the total amount of waste that we receive in the system. There would be a reduction in tonnage that we would receive, which would come with it a reduction in tipping fee revenue. There would be the reduction in the per capita fee, but there would be some offsetting reductions in expenses. We don't believe that those would be significant to the point where we would want to recommend not allowing someone to leave. But we're talking about trying to predict what's going to happen in 7, 8, 10 years time.
So this is the part that I don't have the horsepower up here to think through. So there's fewer fees, there's fewer revenues, so these offset. And maybe just ask sort of the obvious question. Let's say they all left. They just said, you know what, this is crazy. It's going all the way to Carroll County. This is nuts. We're going to send it somewhere else. And none of them wanted to play ball with us anymore. So is what the City of Ames doing, is it viable without those partners? I think that's really just, I want to make sure that we're on the same page on that.
We're going to be doing some more modeling of the finances of the facility this week and next week as we get ready to come back to you with the construction contract awards. My sense is that it would not have a significant impact, but it may increase the tipping fee a couple of bucks.
Okay.
That would be probably the worst case scenario.
So maybe what I would suggest, and this is just one council member, is that by doing this tonight, we're not necessarily setting a precedent for what we would do with other requests. That at this point, this seems reasonable, and maybe just Maxwell was the first one to ask. But I think we'd have to sort of take a look at the fiscal implications if there were others to leave. I don't want this to be a precedent that we feel we have to follow.
Do we anticipate any others asking?
We are aware of some other communities that are interested in leaving.
I talked to one other mayor just last week, very randomly, they're thinking about it. So
We have also received from Story City and from Huxley the extended revised 2080 agreements committing them to another 20 years. We're waiting to collect up all of those agreements that are going to be coming in before bringing them back to you for.
How about Nevada? Or anything?
And then Nevada, yeah, on Monday night, the city of Nevada approved the 2080 agreement as well.
City of Gilbert also approved last week. So there are several that are going in. I think to Brian's point, when we do some of the math, over 90% of the population is committing, we feel is going to commit back to us. Some of the smaller communities, I think it maybe makes sense for some of them, especially those that are on the eastern side of Story County. That Marshall County seems to make some sense for them.
Right.
So
Totally.
and there might be a few others here or there. So we think that that over 90%, it's probably closer to 94% that will recommit to us.
great, thanks.
Okay. So at the start of this, I thought we were looking at some communities that were interested in joining who were not already partners. Is that now evaporated? Was that a different aspect of this?
I'm not aware of that. Anybody would want to
I could have sworn, I maybe made it up.
I don't think we had any interest of anybody coming in at that time.
I do think it's important to note, when we set out on the construction of the R3C and that model, we knew that there were 8 more years in the 2080 agreements. But recognizing that was a big change, we intentionally approached all of these partners and said, we want to give you the opportunity to tell us, are you in or are you out? Are you committed to the 20 years beyond once this new facility opens? We could have chosen to do nothing and simply ride out the next 8 years of the existing agreements, but we wanted to be upfront with those partners, knowing that this might occur with respect to what Maxwell is asking for at the moment.
Any more questions or comments? Otherwise, is there anyone who would like to comment on this item? Seeing none, we will close that and look at a motion approving.
I'll move alternative one.
Second.
Roll call.
Garten,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Junk. Aye. Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Maxwell.
We will move on to item number 36 under administration, resolution approving the Climate Action Grant Program. And Nolan is back with Pa.
Hi, good evening, Council. As you said, here before you with an ask for the Climate Action Grants Program to continue this into another year. We had our first year of the grants last year and thought it went fairly well. So I'd like to start with just kind of a summary of that first year of the program in 2025. So there were two different grant opportunities that we offered. One was the community climate grants, and then the other was the youth mini grants. So for the community climate grants, these are open to all organizations in Ames, groups of individuals, businesses, nonprofits, kept that fairly open for grants of up to $10,000 for any project that aligns with the goals of the climate action plan. So we kept the definition fairly broad too. We wanted to leave it open to our organizations, our residents to bring projects that would align with our climate action plan goals. So we evaluated these grant applications with a team of city staff, and we had some resident volunteers involved with that evaluation too, to select 9 projects out of the 14 applications that were received. And then we do, as part of this, require a 20% cost match, so the grant funds could cover up to 80% of your community climate grant project. And we do that to kind of encourage grant applicants to have ownership over their project, and then also leverage some matching funds into the project to kind of increase the impact. And felt that went really well too. It gives you, with the 70,000 leverage in private matching, a sense of scale of these projects, that some really ambitious projects were undertaken, and it was great to see. And then another way to meet that cost match is through volunteer hours. So we saw some projects take advantage of that as well. And then on the youth grant side, we offered grants up to $500 for students in grade 12 or lower to undertake projects that were more education and outreach focused. So we had six of those projects over the last year. And then we have some pictures here of some of the projects. So this is a new composting center that Green Hills put in over on their site over there. So they've been composting since the fall, and they're looking forward to using that compost in their community gardens this spring. And then this was a project over at Actors Community Theater. They put rooftop solar panels in, and then we had a switch on event where they made a big light switch and we switched on their solar panels. And then here's a few of the youth grants. So on the bottom left, they created these stickers and distributed them to local businesses to increase awareness for the pollinator plan. So that went pretty well. And then on the top, there's an EcoVision event that they organized at the library, a tabling event where they had over 20 organizations tabling there, highlighting different sustainability aspects in the community. And then a few different events too at the library where they were sharing seeds and pots and soil, everything that you might need to grow your own food in an apartment if you don't have access to a backyard. So it's really impressed by our students here in the community and the creativeness of these projects that they took on. And then for the community grants, you have up to a year to complete your project. So we're still looking forward to a few of those coming up in here this spring. There'll be an In Your Backyard festival here in May over that weekend. And then over at Labyrinth Coffee, one of the hosts for the festival received a grant also to put in an electric vehicle charger at their location over there. So as we said, felt the 2025 program went very well and would like to continue that. So requesting $70,000, which is the same allocation as last year, to continue offering the community grants and the youth grants. And then we're also here with a proposal for a new grant opportunity that would target residential owner-occupied home improvements, including solar panels and whole home heat pump systems. So these two systems or projects types were chosen because they have sort of the greatest impact on your greenhouse gas emissions, on climate action, two of the most impactful things that you can do as a homeowner to make an impact, in alignment with our climate action plan goals. And as I said, owner-occupied. So the reason it's limited to owner-occupied and would not include rentals for a few reasons. So you see with some of these programs that include rentals, they can inadvertently result in raised rents. So that's something that we would want to avoid. And then we also, part of the major benefit of doing these two projects is the reduction in your utility bills. And we can't guarantee with some of how the rentals are set up, where sometimes the property owner pays and sometimes the tenant pays those utility bills. So we wouldn't be able to guarantee that the benefits from the project would go to the Ames resident. And then we're also limiting eligibility to low to moderate income households here in Ames. So we'll define that as 120% of the area median income. And we do that for a couple of reasons: to make sure that the investment's going where it's needed the most and where it's going to have the biggest impact. So I'm feeling that limiting it to those households will achieve those goals of really making the most of the funds that would be allocated to the program to have the most impact. And then the amount there, 30% of the total project costs up to $4,000. So balancing a few things when coming up with that amount, we wanted it to be large enough to really have an impact and make really push you over the fence if you're on the fence about doing one of these projects, but limiting it to be small enough where the available funds can be spread across as many projects as possible. So with that 80,000, we could do 20 of those projects in the community. And then timeline, we're thinking July of this year to roll these out to give us a little bit of time to communicate and make residents aware of the new program. And then the community grants would follow a similar timeline. We would announce that those are available if this were to be approved, and then give organizations a few months to come up with projects and write applications and evaluate those this summer in July. So for those reasons, we're recommending approval of alternative number 1, which would allocate $150,000 to the Climate Action Grants Program for the next fiscal year.
So I'm supportive of this, and I commend you for the achievements you had last year. This seems like a reasonable goal. I'm just curious, one question. Have we modeled this off of other communities, or is this something that is really sort of homegrown to what we're doing here?
I would say both. The idea came from other communities. Iowa City has a very similar program. Dubuque does as well, but it's not exactly. It's knowing that those are out there and then sort of tailoring it, some specific aspects of it to Ames.
Great, thanks.
Nolan, the source of funds for the program?
Yeah, so they come from the Council Sustainability, Council Priorities Fund, which has a balance of about $990,000. That was set aside for projects like this that align with the Climate Action Plan.
So Nolan, how much outreach do we do about the availability of the grants and what they'll cover?
Yeah, we learned a lot last year, and I think we'll do a little bit more effective outreach this year. We used a lot of the tools that you're aware of through our e-newsletters, and then to specific groups. We had some success with the teachers over at the high school. Most of those projects originated from the teachers, so we'll continue to do that for the youth grants. And then also it's a similar program to the rebate. I think it meets a different need on the residential side, but we do have a lot of strategies in place there for the rebates from electric. So we would utilize some of those same strategies also.
I'm just wondering if it might be worthwhile to reach out to some of those teachers with some of the ideas that Jerry presented to us for advertising the change in recycling, so that I think about those stickers that the high school students developed. So developing posters, stickers, that kind of thing seems like the sort of activity that we could put in as a suggestion, not necessarily prioritizing those over others, but at least making it known that that would be something we'd be interested in seeing, if council were actually interested in seeing that. But it seems like this program would be a good fit for that kind of public input into our education about recycling.
Yeah, I agree, and I love that idea. I think we've left it really open for the youth grants, but I think to solicit specific projects is a great idea.
Oh, do you know what the 120% of, was it AMI?
Yeah.
Amounts to?
Yeah, it is in the council action form here. So it depends on the persons of your family. In a one-person household, that would be $104,000.
Oh, that's that chart staring me in the face. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions from council? Anyone wishing to speak on this item? Seeing none, we will close public comment and we can entertain a motion.
I would move that we approve up to $150,000 in the fiscal year 26-27 budget from the Council Priorities Fund Sustainability Reserve to be made available in the amounts that are listed in the action form.
Second. It's been moved and seconded. This is another roll call.
Fetcher.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you. Moving on to item number 37, Mark's going to come up on this one, resolution with Jordison.
So this item's on the agenda for the council to consider whether to declare that Jordison Construction is a non-responsible bidder for purposes of the public bidding law. So I was contacted on Saturday after the agenda was published late Friday, and I sent a copy of everything to Jordison. And then Saturday, I was contacted by an attorney for Jordison who, obviously, they don't want to see, he doesn't want to see his client labeled as non-responsible, but he also raised due process concerns. And, the basics of due process are notice and an opportunity to respond or, make your statement. And, he raises the argument that, essentially receiving something late on Friday and then, having the meeting where it's discussed Tuesday was not enough time for he and his client to put together their case to come and present it to you. And therefore that the notice is inadequate. I think we have an argument that the notice is adequate, but it's like if they're raising the issue of adequate notice, then I think the best course of action is to not deal with this tonight, but rather move it to the next council agenda. So then they have 2 weeks to prepare for it. And I think that takes care of any due process concerns that they might have. And I think that's fair as well. So we do want to be fair. So my recommendation would be that we defer this until the next council meeting.
So do you need a motion
Table it,
to
yeah, table it, yeah,
Okay.
table it until the next
Till the
council
next
meeting.
council meeting?
Yeah.
Okay.
I move we table this item to the March 24th council meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and
I
seconded.
have one question. So, and I'm
Sure.
going to be supportive of this, but I think it's important that we clarify what that next meeting involves. So we've never done this before. And
Right.
could you walk us through what it means for us to hold a contractor as a non-responsive contractor? Could you walk us through that, and maybe for them too, if they're still watching?
Sure. So the public bidding law, chapter 26, says that, when we take bids on a public improvement project, we have to award the bid to the lowest responsive bidder. Now, the responsive part is an administrative determination that's made all the time because, someone fails to include something in the application that's required, right? So that's non-responsive. That's easy. Whether the bidder is responsible or not is really a determination the council needs to make. Now, there's nothing in Iowa law that lays out a process or procedure for this. Okay, so to some extent, we're coming up with it, and I did check with other city attorneys in the large cities in Iowa. They say they never do that as an administrative determination. They always take it to their council to decide. And so that's why, we put it on the agenda. So, it will involve city staff sort of laying out their case, our case for why we believe Jordison is a non-responsible bidder. And then Jordison will get an opportunity to present their case and say why the council should not make that determination. So, and that's it. I mean, I don't think we need to have some grandiose process in this. I think we just have to have it on the agenda and give them adequate notice, which we're now doing. And then, we put on our case and they get a chance to state their case, and then the council gets to decide.
So this is sort of a quasi-judicial function for the council. Am I saying
Yes.
that right?
Yes.
Let's say that we decide that they're a non-responsible bidder. Do they have the ability to appeal that to the district court, or does it end here?
They would have the ability to appeal that to district court. I mean, any determination by the council could be appealed to, of a quasi-judicial nature, could be appealed to district court.
Okay, thanks.
And there's no need to have a closed session for that kind
No.
of discussion?
No. In fact, we're really not allowed to have a closed session for that kind of a discussion. Okay.
Any other
Anything else?
questions? This is just a voice vote since not a resolution. Okay, all those in favor of tabling until March the 24th, indicate by sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same right. Motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to item number 38, discussion on additional questions for the 2026 resident satisfaction survey with Susan.
Good evening. Twice a year, I come to you regarding the resident satisfaction survey, one time in the late winter, early spring, to ask about any questions you might have for the survey. And then in the fall, I present the survey to you as sort of the kickoff to the budget process. And just to remind you about the timeline for the resident satisfaction survey, typically we send 1,350 hard copy surveys out to randomly selected utility bill customers, and a similar number of digital surveys goes out to Iowa State students. And those go out for students first, so we can miss the finals and get them quickly into their hands. For the rest, for the written, for the hard copy surveys, those usually go out in April, and they are asked to return surveys by May or into June. We give them a little bit of a cushion there. I usually get the frequencies back from Iowa State. We've been working with the Iowa State, the Institute for Design Research, IDRO office. We've been working with them for more than 10 years. They tend to get us the frequencies back by August, this final report sometime in September, and then I usually do the presentation in October or November back to you. I'm telling you the timeline because it does help you think about the kinds of questions you might want to add. And this is your opportunity to add those questions, but I would just remind you that you're not required to add any questions, and that the survey is currently 12 pages long, so we don't have a lot of space to add questions, but it does work out every so often that we have a very timely issue, or that we have something that people are very curious about and they just want to toss out there. But oftentimes adding questions means taking questions away. So that's in a nutshell the resident satisfaction survey. And I just wanted to take a few minutes to just get some feedback from you on what you think you would like to do with the 2026 version.
I'm curious, Susan, have you had a chance to visit with Keith and the Parks and Rec Department? We've got some potential projects coming up with potentially a field house, gymnasium type of structure that's going to require a lot of public input. We've got potentially doing something with the Ontario, what we're calling the Ontario Park, just for the sake of discussion. Are those things that we would consider grabbing some initial sort of snapshot feedback on?
We have done that in the past, but it's been more theoretical. Are you interested in this kind of project or this kind of project? When a project is already in it's already starting to be developed, typically we're not using this tool for that because of the time frame involved. There is such a lag between when people respond and when we actually get the report back. I did look over the last couple of years of surveys to see some of the things we had asked about community gardens, people's interest in community gardens, and then we did look at expanding community gardens. We looked at organized trash collection, recycling. So some of the things that are coming up now, you can see that there's usually a couple years build up. And what you're doing is kind of building your foundation of information and data points with the survey.
No, I love the longitudinal aspect of this a ton. I was just curious if maybe right now would be a good time to think about those subjects, but maybe not. Thanks.
One of the things that strikes me as a little bit odd is the way we ask about asset funding. So we ask whether people have used the services that asset funds, and then we ask them, should we spend more, less, or the same? But we don't actually tell them how much we're spending, like we do with the arts programs and services. So I'm wondering whether people actually have any basis for understanding whether they want us to spend more, less, or the same for that.
So that was a question added for the first time last year. So sometimes we add questions and then we finesse them a little bit because we think, oh, that's not exactly how we wanted that to go through. So that was one way of trying to capture, and again, in a very small amount of space, capture a really complex issue and get some sort of gut reaction. But we can certainly look at, if that's what the council wants, to look at reformatting that, or perhaps adding some additional context.
Well, I wonder if just adding how much our asset pool for the year is, since we don't know how it gets divided up by the team when they're making their decisions. But right now, the respondents here don't really have any point of reference for how much we're already spending on asset. So it could probably just be dealt with an additional sentence in the context.
And I wondered if we wanted to entertain anything, thinking about the TIF and the downtown visioning program, as well as the Lincoln Way corridor. If there was anything that we might want to know about that, I don't know what council would think about maybe just knowing how often people currently come downtown and what might make them desire to come downtown more. So just thinking that we've completed the visioning program, and now this is a chance to maybe get a little bit more input from the community about what pieces might have priority. A suggestion.
I just think that, and I don't disagree necessarily, it just gets tricky because priority over what exactly? Like, then are we gonna, do we name all the things we're possibly thinking about and have them pick? I don't know. It's a good question. Maybe something about what would make you come downtown more often would be a
right
kind of targeted question.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned, Susan, that of course people say parking is one of their issues, and we don't want, maybe it even says beyond parking, just so that we get some of the other answers about what are the kinds of things that might make them interested in coming downtown. But that's one idea. And I was thinking that, there are a lot of, understandably so, Cyride takes up quite a bit. There might be some way to finagle a couple of items to combine, but I am more thinking this is an open-ended question, but that's if others also think that that's worth asking.
So we do add a couple of questions at the end that says something like, what do you love about Ames? Or what is, in the past, it's been, what would make Ames a fun and vibrant community? So we have done different open-ended questions like that. And if that's, something you want to write about downtown with a specific focus, that would be an option. It reminded me, Brian, when you were talking about sort of thinking it through. Again, think about what you want to do with the information. I forgot to remind you that. When you think about formulating questions and topics, what would you do if you had the answers? Is it something that you have control over? Is it something that is a priority for you? And so that should help you formulate your questions, because sometimes we're just curious.
I had a suggestion for a question or two I would potentially drop I don't know if you guys want to hear those now, but they're in the sense of community section. How many of your neighbors do you know? There are 5 options there, and most people only have 2 houses on either side of them, right? So it's either half or all or none. But we have 5 options here. But also, I wonder if we couldn't ask that in those listed community, like the ones where it's like somewhat disagree, somewhat agree. You could just have it be a listed question and not stand on its own. It would just take up a little less space. So you could say like, I feel like I know my neighbors, strongly disagree, somewhat agree, blah, 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 and take out the part A there. I don't know. I just feel lukewarm about that question. A and B could be put in those lists. Yes, true. I agree. And then that just makes them appear short. It makes the survey appear shorter.
That's helpful.
It's not technically, I guess.
I know we've been very creative about creating tables and shortening the questions up. So I think that can happen if you're worried about space and you can't figure out which question you want to get rid of. We have been able to combine questions, make them into tables.
I'm all right even striking that neighbor's question. Anybody have a big issue with that one?
I don't.
Because I mean, no is very relative. Like I might know their name, but do I know them really? I mean, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. It's just subjective. So I don't. Do you want motions on these, or is this?
It will. Yeah.
I'll just try it. I would move that we strike the question, how many of your neighbors do you know?
I'll second that.
You can talk me out of it. It just was lukewarm for me. So
I was just.
I don't know how I would answer that.
Yeah.
And I have lived here consistently for 32 years, so.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to, I don't know what page that is. Oh, page 10, A. How many of your neighbors do you know? To remove that question, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that passes.
Okay, I didn't want to
There's one less.
And there was a request from the Human Relations Commission about a question too. So I just want to remind you that was thrown out there.
Right. And I like that.
I don't have a problem asking that one, I guess. I
Yeah.
thought that was interesting, and it would allow us some access to information that we are no longer able to collect
Yeah.
because of the state. But I don't think that asking this question in a survey would be prohibited.
Right.
So the question was, in the past 12 months, have you felt treated unfairly in Ames because of race, national origin, color, marital status, disability, religion, sex, sexual orientation, or gender identity? Yes or no, and then please select all that apply.
I would move that we add that question.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
So I'm wondering about the sustainability section and whether there might be more useful questions for us there, because it feels like the most important climate action steps maybe have already been subsumed under our implementation plan for climate action.
What page?
It's right above the sense
Page
of
10.
community, so it's
Oh.
at 10.
Right above.
Thank you.
And then the biggest reason to commit to environmental sustainability. I'm not sure about the purpose of that question. I mean, is that so that we're going to learn how to target people with our education programs? Or I don't know, but it feels like we should have some sustainability questions, but I'm not sure these are the ones.
Yeah, I even wondered about whether or not now we might ask something about the recycling program and make sure that people have yet another opportunity to tell us what they think about that.
So the timing for that might be curious because they will get the surveys in April or May, and then you'll get the results in the fall, but the program won't have started.
yet, so that might be better for next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could see us putting in a question about what people think the most effective ways to educate about our climate initiatives are,
Or maybe
open-ended.
or maybe like what improvements are you considering to your home, or like what improvements could you make if the city incentivized them, or something about, I don't know how to ask that one, but something where we're kind of getting at the thing from our last item where we were talking about the grant program for solar panels or whole home heat pumps. I have no idea how many people would even consider or would even be considering solar panels or whole home heat pumps. So maybe something like that, but adding a few more options of common, weatherization and other sort of common sustainability improvements or renovations.
And I don't own a home.
Or yeah,
Right.
exactly.
So-
That would be an
Right.
option, yeah, on the
So
list.
we asked that in the demographic information. So we already asked them right now,
About the
why don't you own a
owner.
home? Is it short-term stay? Is it too expensive? I mean, we have a whole series of, so
Yeah.
we could separate out.
And if you
This would be like, yeah, if you own a home, what sustainability improvements are you considering? Or
Yeah, I don't think I would use the current information in the sustainability section really
at all? Yeah,
So
I hear you. Scratch
I'd
them.
be okay to take that section out.
I would move that we remove this current questions in the sustainability section.
Second.
We'll deal with those in two separate things, I guess.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
I'd move that we add a question about people's potential interest in what improvements they might consider making to their homes.
Second.
Moved and seconded to include something
Do you
about.
need more information?
So you
than
said
that?
if incentivized
Or
for like carbon reduction or incentivized for energy efficiency or something?
yeah, or ask them what ones they're considering making and would incentive is it? Yeah, it would, like or would it have to be incentivized? I don't know exactly how you form.
So,
that
I mean, I think
question.
you want to just discern somebody who's remodeling their kitchen from somebody who
Right.
might be making.
Sustainability related
Okay.
improvements. So weatherization, heat pumps, solar.
So, but is the purpose to learn whether we should be considering incentives or just
Well-
to learn what people think they might do?
I think that one will help us think about incentives. So really, mostly just what people think they might do is my question.
With the resource.
Because if we ask, oh, do you want an incentive? I mean, yeah, who doesn't? I think if we just asked what sustainability improvements would be at the top of your wish list, and then we decide how to use that information to build incentive programs.
Yeah, I'm kind of thinking maybe we could word it similarly to on page 4O, the question about SunSmart Ames. It's like, are you participating in the power pack? And it's yes or no. If no, why not? Like too expensive, not interested in renewable energy, short-term stay in Ames, that sort of thing. So I think we could maybe word it similarly to that with what sustainable improvements are you interested in making to your home?
Yeah. If none, why? Yeah, there you go. If none, why not? Yeah. Sure. That enough. Okay.
That enough to consider.
Yeah, is that enough clarification for you?
Sure. I mean, I understand that question.
Okay, all right. And is that the question everybody understood they were voting on, or do we need to do that again?
I don't think we voted yet.
Okay, haven't voted yet. So you moved and you seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries.
Do you need a motion about adding the money for.
Yes.
So
you
I would
wanted-
move that we add the allocated asset amount to the question about asset service funding.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded to include the dollar amount of asset along with that
Yeah.
question.
So really quickly, just on that one specifically, so I believe that the items that are there under asset were your priorities that you determined. And so those priorities can change from year to year. So we might have to do a little bit of tweaking to that, but I understand your point of kind of putting those dollars there. So we will rework that section and add the dollar amounts there and match it up to your current priorities.
All right. Moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay, opposed? Motion carries. Are we running out of space yet? Or
Yes.
Did we capture your comments, Tim?
Oh, I don't think there's anything to ask at this
Okay.
point. So,
All right, about the parks. I just didn't know if there were some additional
Nope.
questions you wanted to
No.
ask. Okay.
So the only other one, Anita, you brought up was something about what would make you go downtown more often or beyond additional parking.
Right. So I will move that one. I don't know if anyone else thinks that's a good question to ask, but.
I would second that. I assume that Susan, working with the team, would come
Yes.
up with phrasing that makes
Right.
sense.
Would help us get at some
It looks like
meaningful
you wanted something
answer.
more open-ended.
Right, and I think sometimes that's helpful. Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Do we have an interest in asking a mirror question regarding Campus Town?
Mm,
So
Yeah, might as well.
It would be interesting for the student audience versus.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. I'll move that we ask that as of Campus Town as well.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, council feel good about that discussion? You have enough direction that you can
You've got some new
create
questions on
space
there,
and-
so it's a fresh, you've got some fresh information, and you took some out, which had gotten dated, which does happen with this survey because unless you say to take them out, they tend to get carried forward each year. And like you mentioned, some of them seem a bit dated now. The Climate Action Plan says 2023 on it, so
Mhm.
I think that was a good call.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to item number 39, Fitch Family Indoor Aquatic Center bid package.
Good evening, City Council members. There's a lot of information already listed in the council action form, so I'm not going to rehash that. I think the main point is that we do have a change order for one of the contractors for some work that was done, and we need to pay them. That's a obligation that we have. The one thing with this change is, and again, this is spelled out, we do have a disagreement as to how much we should pay, if we should pay anything at all. We are in negotiations with the architect, and we'll continue those negotiations, and we'll bring something back at a future meeting to council. But really, the main thrust of this action form is to approve the change order to Brockway an amount of $44,000 and some dollars. And city manager's recommendation is alternative one. If there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
So Keith, I apologize. I misunderstood. So there is some dispute over the amount?
No, not for the amount. So the total of the work that was done in this maintenance area was a total of $59,000, and is spread out over 3 contractors, and that's spelled out in the council action form. 2 of the change orders were approved administratively. This change order for Brockway is $44,000, so it takes us over that $50,000 cumulative for that contract with Brockway. So that's why we're bringing that to you. The disagreement comes between the architect and us, and which was kind of mentioned in the council action form, is that we feel that we gave direction to the architect to provide an open space in the maintenance area. The architect thinks that, and we didn't get that, there's mechanical equipment in there, and really fundamentally changed how we were going to use that space. So we went ahead, issued a constructive change directive to get some of the equipment moved, so we could better utilize that space. So we're thinking it should be on the architect to pay for this total change. Architect thinks that we should do it because the equipment was shown in the construction documents and we had an opportunity to change it. So that's where the disagreement comes in between us and the architect as to who should pay for the total of this change. That's what we're having the conversation about. That's where the disagreement comes in.
So it's not whether the work was done or the work was done satisfactorily. It's a question of whether this should come out of our coffers or the architect's.
Correct. And at this point, we need to pay. We need to pay the contractor. So that's what we want to do. But we'll continue to have the conversations with the architect and then determine, who pays what portion of that $59,000, and we'll bring that back at another time.
Has the work been completed on that room?
Yes. Yep. All of this work has been done.
And are there any other areas in the project where there are such disputes, or is this isolated to this one room?
Right now, this is the only dispute that we have.
Okay.
Or disagreement, I would call it.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Well, we still disagree with the architect.
Yes.
We still have to resolve a couple other issues, right, on the whole project.
Yeah. There's a few things that we're working through.
Outside surface.
Yeah.
We've got to come back to you on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the staining, we're hoping to bring something back to you in March 24th meeting is what our goal is.
So Keith, it looks like you all were trying to come up with a workaround, but what's that going to do to how you had originally intended to use that space? Is that going to, with these changes, will there still be some things that will be difficult for you all to do?
Yes. Yeah. So
Okay.
so with it is better than what it was, but we were really hoping for a wide open space that we could use how we wanted to. There are 2 water heaters, there's 2 water softeners, there's a water expansion tank that's hanging from the ceiling. So there are some things that operationally we will have to store in other portions of the building, which we were hoping that we didn't have to. So there are some things. It's better than what it was,
Okay.
but not as good as what we had hoped for.
Originally planned.
So I don't want to take this meeting longer, but how did this, at what point was this discovered? I mean, at some point, equipment is being put into the room. How is it we got this far without us knowing about the problem?
So when we did a walkthrough in October of 2025, we walked into this area and we noticed housekeeping pads, which are just pads of concrete about 2 inches, 3 inches above the floor. And I asked, what are these for? And it's like, oh, it's for water heaters and it's for water softeners. And it's like, hey, we wanted an open space here. So that's when we brought it up in October of 24. Eventually in November, or 25, sorry. Then in November of 25, they came up with some options. We issued a constructive change directive, the CCD, to get to work because we needed to open up as much space as we could. So they did that and they started doing the work. now the work is finished. We got the final cost, and now we're having those conversations as to, and we've started these conversations a while back as to who should pay for it. But again, there's a disagreement, and we're working through that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
You're welcome.
And Keith, this doesn't affect, it sounds like it's far enough back that it's not affecting the timing of the opening of the
Correct.
facility. Okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you. Okay. So we can entertain a motion for one of the alternatives.
I would move alternative 1.
Second?
Okay. And alternative 1 is to approve the Fitch Family Indoor Aquatic Center bid package 2022-1, change order number 8 to Brockway Mechanical and Roofing in the amount of $44,749. So roll call, please.
Junk,
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Peter Hansen,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Keith.
So Keith, before you leave, do we have any revised sense of when we're going to cut a ribbon?
So actually, you can be talking to Susan about that real quick, but
We won't tell anyone.
Yeah. So we don't have the final date. There's still a couple of things that we're working through, but I will just say that we're hoping to have the facility open the first part of March with a ribbon cutting prior to that. Or April, I'm sorry. First part of April.
You missed it, Keith.
Sorry. So the facility opened the first part of April with a ribbon cutting prior to
That's
that.
great. Thanks.
And we are looking at having a donor recognition event as well prior to the opening. So,
Thank you.
all right. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thanks, you too. Okay, item number 40, rapid needs purchase for Dayton Avenue substation transfer.
Bruce.
Bruce?
Curtis.
Oh, Curtis, I'm sorry.
Good evening, Council.
Good
Sorry,
evening.
Curtis Spence, I'm the Assistant Director for Electric. Don's out on vacation, enjoying sun somewhere south.
Okay, thanks, Curtis.
So this item, yes, is for the report of rapid needs purchase that we use to perform an emergency repair on one of our large transformers in Dayton Avenue substation. The transformer that we found needed repaired, it was a bad leak while performing a normal inspection. Normally, we can find these kinds of things. The leak's not bad enough where we can work through it and plan out accordingly. This leak was bad where we had to take off the load off the transformer, put it on other transformers. That is the contingency for this kind of emergency, but those transformers aren't designed to carry that amount of load for a long duration. So we use the rapid needs purchase procedure and was able to find the RMS, a company that had the equipment and the technical ability to perform a repair, made the repair on the leaking bushing, which required us to drain all the oil out, had to recondition the oil, put it back in. Everything held. It operated for 4 days. Then we found another leak on an entirely different piece of equipment on the transformer, had to drain the oil again, and we went through and replaced all of the gaskets and put it back together, and then now it's in service again. So this is us asking for council to accept the report for the rapid needs procedure.
Funding comes from where? Funding.
Sorry, yes, the funding comes for, so we did have in the budget where we were prepared for performing these type of repairs on this transformer as well as another one, and we used those funds to perform this repair. And we have additional funding to perform in the budget to perform the repair on the planned repair on the additional transformer as well. So no new funds are needed.
Questions?
Do you know how old this transformer was?
I don't know specifically, but I know that it was around 25 years old. So it's doing quite well. And so I think the age of it, like I said, we did have on the schedule to perform just a normal repair, but weren't expecting this amount of leak. But yes, it's about 25 years, and I think we have another, hopefully 20 years plus out of it that we should expect.
So this is an after the fact thing, but we normally have a process of going through requests for bids on things. It's $221,000. In a hypothetical world, if we'd had the margin to do a regular bidding, how close do you see this bid to what we would normally see? In other words, is there a big delta between the rapid and what we would think if we'd done a bidding project?
We were actually really impressed with the amount that RMS quoted to do this emergency repair. It came right in line with what we were expecting. We were expecting around 120 to do the repair, but it cost us an additional amount because of having to go back in and do it twice.
Right.
I will say our procedure from now on, going forward, anytime we open a transformer up, every gasket will be replaced.
Right. Okay. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. So, motion to accept either alternative 1 or alternative 2?
Move alternative 1.
Okay, alternative 1, to accept the report of the rapid needs purchase for repairs to transformer DA6T4 at a cost totaling $221,680.46.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Rollins.
Aye.
Feedy Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
And Curtis, you're on for number 41, too.
So this item is asking council to authorize the Director of Electric Services to commit the city to natural gas contract extensions within the approved budget for the next fiscal year. Now we've performed this practice a few times in the past, and as recent as last November, you provided the ability for Don to carry out that responsibility. And I would say that that's worked out pretty well for us. We described that in the council action form that we were able to save about $1.5 million compared to what we had budgeted because of the ability to just work with how the natural gas market is constructed, paying attention to the daily prices, talking to our gas consultant, and being able to respond rather quickly. So this is asking for the ability to not only commit to those contract extensions, but also be able to purchase in different chunks, if you will. If it's purchasing from the gas daily, purchasing monthly or seasonal, that will allow us the ability to, I think, provide us the best option to be able to consider not only cost, but the needs that we as electric, but also Public Works has with resource recovery.
So Curtis, you were able to negotiate a current agreement that takes us to when? Till
the end of June.
So we're lucky because prices are skyrocketing right now. We're locked into an attractive price.
That's right.
So we
do have
very
some
fortunate,
time to be able to take action on this one. This is for after June for next fiscal year.
Correct.
So
Curtis, correct me if I'm wrong. So the gas line we have that comes down from the I'm not sure what you call it, the main core line, we share that with Iowa State. Is that correct?
yes, as well as other providers also. I know Lincoln Way Energy, Verbio, they use that as well.
And so, and I'm fully supportive of this, but I am curious, does this require coordination with the other participants who use that gas line?
It does not. So separately, so this is to purchase the actual gas. Separately, we have contracts for transport. And so we buy a portion of that line that we can transport that gas that we purchased. And so we do have contracts with Alliant, who owns that portion that you're talking about, as well as Northern Natural to get it to that portion that you're talking about.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions?
So if I'm reading this correctly, our recommendation is alternative 3, not alternative 1, which we often see, that we're going to be trying to combine number 1 and number 2 like we did in our last vote on allowing this kind of procedure.
That's correct. Yeah, that is kind of confusing. So we're recommending alternative 3, which is the ability to do all of the above of as far as spot price, by daily, by monthly, by seasonal.
Sounds like it was pretty successful if it was able to save us over $1.5 million in the fiscal year 25-26 budget.
Absolutely. So we're not making any guarantees, but we're hoping for even better.
Any other questions? Okay, we can entertain a motion.
Move alternative 3.
Second.
Moved and seconded, alternative 3, blend alternatives 1 and 2, securing enough firm gas to burn some RDF every day and increase burning when spot gas is more cost effective. Roll call.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Fetcher.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye. Motion carried. Thank you.
Have a good night.
You too. Moving on to item number 42, staff report regarding device delivery seller permits. Chief Huff.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So in the last legislative session, the Department of Revenue added a new license for device delivery. So I've tried to break this down and make it less complicated. But essentially what it is the delivery service of the device that delivers the product. So these products are made wholly or partly of glass or metal, and they're designed for inhaling through combustion tobacco, hemp, or other plant materials, and unfortunately also controlled substances. So this permit exists. The question we have as a policy question for the council is whether they want to entertain these licenses or not for the delivery. You can certainly decide to entertain it on a case-by-case basis like you do liquor licenses and things like that. You can have a policy that you're not going to issue these permits, or you can pretty much ignore it and the state can issue the license and you can stay out of it altogether. The reason it's important is there's a $1,500 application fee to the person that wants to apply for this permit, and that is non-refundable. So if you have a policy that you're not going to allow this particular activity, we would want to notify those 7 retailers who can sell those products but not deliver them, so that they don't apply for a $1,500 license that they can't get and they can't get their money back. So that's the question we have for you is which direction do you want to go?
You mean delivery like to a person's door?
Yes.
Wow, that is in the weeds. Okay.
I'm not even sure if anybody will apply for it. $1,500 is quite a bit actually for a permit like that. And on top of that, there's a lot of tax on these. There's a 40% excise tax on it. So I don't even know if anyone will apply, but we certainly don't want anybody to be out $1,500 if they apply and you decide you're not interested in this particular activity. So
Yeah.
we would as soon just get ahead of it. No one's applied yet. No one's asked about it yet, but we'd like to stop them if you don't want to do this.
Right. So,
Chief, do we have any sense of what other communities are doing with this?
No, the only community I know of is Nevada has decided they're not going to issue any of these permits. And that's how it actually came to our attention in the first place, is I think after that happened, the clerk's office here in Ames was contacted about what our policy might be. And that was actually the first we heard of this new license anyway.
But I don't want to confuse it. Not issuing means they still apply to the city. The city's made.
Yeah, I think they
policy.
applied and they decided as a policy that Nevada was not going to issue the permit.
The cleanest way would be option 3, just to stay out of it altogether. If you don't.
And do you have thoughts from a law enforcement perspective on this?
Well,
Well,
I'll just be honest. I've never seen these devices that weren't used for illegal substances.
It doesn't prohibit people from buying them.
No, they're allowed
You
to
can
buy
go to
them.
the, you can go to the, yeah. You can go to these 7 retailers right now and buy any of these
In the
things.
City of Ames.
This is just the delivering them to your door.
So my question is on this table. And this feels like we're, once we allow pizzas to be picked up, what's the difference between delivering the pizzas, right? So, but but this is different than pizza. And because it is being used for controlled substances, do you have any thoughts for us?
Again, my only thought is I've never seen them used for anything but that.
But do you want people who are doing that to get in their car and go get one, or do you want it to be rough?
That would be a poor decision, just like people drinking.
Exactly. So, I mean, it doesn't prohibit the sale of the item.
And again, whatever action you take tonight, we still might not have anybody apply for this license because it is pretty expensive.
Well, one of the things that I've been frustrated about in council is just the amount of time we've had to take on approving liquor licenses. I wish this wasn't on our plate.
Right.
And so this just adds one more thing to our plate. Unless there's some kind of compelling reason why we need to facilitate the delivery, it just makes more work for our staff to do.
Right.
I'm not inclined to add more to it.
That would be option 3. I believe.
Seems like if the state wants it, we can let them have it.
It's option 3, right, Jeff?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to just decline to take any action, the state can issue the license without you being involved at all. And then they would just get the license, and only if there was some issue would that then go back to the state to decide if they want to revoke a license. I'm not sure what that violation would be off the top of my head. There's some restrictions on the delivery. You have to check ID and, ensure age, all that kind of stuff. And if there was some violation there, that would go back to the state.
I'd move option 3.
Second.
Okay, option 3 is to decline to take action, allowing the state permitting to proceed without local involvement. And that is a voice vote, right? Okay, so all of those in favor can indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, planning and housing, Miss Vanessa, number 43, CDBG.
I think that was the thought with making it $1,500.
Good evening.
evening.
We have an item before you regarding our 26-27 proposed annual action plan for our community development and our home programs. And, this is a annual event that we do so that we can submit our applications to HUD. Our plan is due every year within 45 days before the beginning of our fiscal year. So typically, it's supposed to be due by May 17th. And so it also requires a 30-day comment period. At this time, we have not been notified as to what our 26 CDBG and home funding allocations are going to be. And until we have those amounts, we can't actually submit our plan. However, if we don't get started with at least the public comment and identifying what project we would like to do, we will miss the window of opportunity to submit our action plan because there is a drop dead date of August 16th of 2026 that we have to have it submitted by. So we are just proceeding as if we are going to know what that allocation is and we've decided what we are going to do. I have already had to request an extension because we know that we're not going to meet the May 17th deadline. I have yet heard approval from HUD yet on extending the submittal of our plan. I'm hoping that they will do that, considering they haven't told us what that amount would be. So right now, as you have in front of you, we're using our 25-26 allocation as our projected budget for 26-27 for both CDBG of 552,927 and home of 278,382. Because we know that any more delays of submitting the plan, we've been delayed for the last 4 years. And so when we submit our plan in August, HUD has 45 days to approve it, which is the end of September. And we start our environmental requirements and all that in October, December, and before you know it's May 2nd, and we haven't had the opportunity to get anything out the door. And so we end up backing up against our timeliness tests. So we want to, again, try to get ahead of all of that so that we can proceed with getting our projects up and running. And so our budget is also going to include a combination of our 25-26 rollover funds, projected income, and this next allocation. And as you can see in our budget, we're proposing for next year to create a home buyer assistance program, but this time we've made it citywide, in that we're working on our Baker subdivision, that possibly we can get it started citywide rather than just waiting for homes to be built. So that's like just over $300,000. And we had a public facility for nonprofit rehab program. We've done that program several years ago to try to help some of the nonprofits who own their facilities to get them maintained, whether it's painting, whether it's handicap accessibility, whether it's windows or anything like that, since they may not have any sources. And we want those facilities to be in good shape because of the people homeless people that they help and serve. So we wanted to make sure of that. And then we are proposing to continue our single family housing rehab program. And then we're currently doing property disposition, which basically means we're having snow removal, mowing of the 3 properties that we own along Duff, Grand, and also at the Baker subdivision. And then we are proposing, not in this 26-27 year, but we want to talk about that on our next action form, about expanding our infrastructure improvement program to include South Third and South Maple, but I'll talk about that. And so we're proposing that as a substantial amendment. And so based on the revenue, we're looking to propose anticipated selling 2 of the remaining Habitat houses in July that would hopefully bring in $100,000, and along with trying to sell 6 market rate homes in the Baker subdivision, which we had our request for proposals today. We met and talked about that request for proposals with interested parties today. So those proposals would be due at the end of March. And then we're projecting to have a rollover balance of just over $500,000. And so that would be all of the funding that we would have for our CDBG for 26-27 for those activities. Are there any questions about CDBG? Questions? Okay, great. Then the home program, again, we're using our 25-26 allocation. However, we're looking to adjust the program that we had in there. We talked about doing a tenant-based rental assistance program, but again, as our goal is to try to complete the Baker subdivision, both the market rate lots and both the affordable housing lots, we like to just adjust that all of the funding that we have available for home go to construct at least 3 single-family homes on the affordable housing lots, so that we can, again, get ahead of getting all of that north side of the subdivision completed. And so we have projected, again, the 25-26 rollover balance and the allocation, and proposing just over $1 million to administer that particular program. And so, any questions about home? Okay, so we're bringing these 2 as proposed activities. As in the past, we try to get your feedback before we go out to the public. Normally, also, when we're doing our 5-year consolidated plan, we go to the public first, and then we go to the council. And so we are, again, requesting that these be considered as proposed activities, and then staff would go out and conduct public forums at the end of March to get feedback from the public, and then bring those comments back to you so that we can proceed beginning to write our action plan as we still wait on HUD to determine the amounts that we're going to get, so that we wouldn't have to come back again. We would probably, if the numbers are high, we will adjust the amounts according to how much the allocation is based on these projects. We can do them equally. If it's low, we can reduce them by the same equal amounts, depending on what the funding would be. And so, any questions about CDBG anticipated program for 26, 27?
Vanessa, I've asked a couple of times, and I'll keep asking, is the federal government giving any kind of signals on housing allocations?
I don't have, no, sir, they have not.
Okay.
We do know that they passed the budget. We still don't know how much is going to be allocated to the CDBG and home programs across the country. And that's, it's a little unnerving because you don't know if it's going to go up, you don't know if it's going to go down, but you can't wait because we have a certain time frame to get those, because the delay in the allocation does not delay
Right.
anything.
Right.
It doesn't delay having to meet our timeliness test. It doesn't delay when our action plan year starts or any of that. So we're just, again, at the mercy of waiting to find out. But I talked to my colleagues a couple of weeks ago, and we're all in the same boat, just moving forward blind. I feel like we're in a tunnel with a candle, and we're just going down the tunnel, but we don't have a lot of light, but we're going.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Yeah.
You got that analogy, tunnel, candle.
It's okay.
Any questions? Otherwise, we can entertain a motion for one of the alternatives on number 43 related to the, bless you, related to the 2026-27 annual action plan projects for CDBG and home programs.
Move alternative 1.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve that program as outlined and direct staff to proceed with hosting public forums for citizen input and feedback, and direct staff to request an extension for submitting the action plan as needed. And this is a voice vote, right? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And your second one is 44. And that is, we also have 3 alternatives there related to amendments, again, to the proposed 2025-26 Community Development Block Grant CDBG Annual Action Plan to modify programs and budget. And this is a resolution setting the date of public hearing.
Yes, as we were working on our 26-27 annual action plan, knowing that we hadn't received our allocation, again, we're trying to stay ahead of making our timeliness test this year, and also trying to get ahead of spending money and to be ready once we receive the money for next year. And so we would like to, we've done this historical survey of Census Tract 10 that includes South Third and South Maple. And so we would like to proceed with getting that started sooner than later, because right now we're doing South Russell and South Riverside, but we've had to do that in the winter months, which has been a challenge depending on the weather. And so we know in the past that this has met SHPO's approval because this has already been a study. And so we would like to proceed with getting the bids ready to go out so that by the time we get proposals for lot sales, we're hoping that will happen in between July and October. We will have a project ready to go so that program income from the sales of those lots, we won't be in a position where we'll be in a timeliness test problem again for May 27. So we would like to proceed adding this project to this year's program. But because it's over $100,000, we have to do what they call a substantial amendment and do a 30-day comment period and get that submitted to HUD for approval. Also, I wanted to bring to the council's attention that we've kind of adjusted some of the programs to make way to do this program. So it includes not doing the first-time homebuyer program, the public facilities nonprofit rehab program, or the sidewalk program, but we've moved most of those into 26-27. Also, and I wanted to bring to the council's attention, because this may be a concern coming up at the public forums, is that we, at this time, would be recommending not to continue our rental affordability program. There's just been a lot of concern, and we'd like to really have a conversation with a lot of the nonprofits and with Asset about the duplication of funding. From what our program does and everyone else's program, it's like we're all doing the same thing. And it doesn't feel like we're helping people because we're all using our money, and it's like we're not getting anywhere. It's the same people that we're just shifting from agency to agency. And so I would really like to have a conversation with them to talk about who's going to do what, because we would like to use our CDBG money to actually fill a gap that makes a difference, but not to continue to provide deposit assistance or first month's rent or second month's rent when everyone else is doing the same thing. That is what I wanted to also bring to council's attention about that, in case there's a concern, because we brought it back because it was a need to say there was a gap in deposit assistance, and they would like for us to cover that, but then everybody's doing the same thing. So I think it's time for a conversation to just talk about that. So I just wanted to make sure that I brought that to the council's attention. But other than that, this is what we're proposing to do to the substantial amendment to add this South Third and South Maple Public Works water project to this year's action plan.
Vanessa, I did have one question on this. I haven't looked at the Ames 2040 plan. Is this part of town slated to continue to be single-family residential, or is this area possibly areas that might be subject to redevelopment?
Well, Census Tract 10 is really large, and we have really just focused our CDBG funds on the residential area that's been a vital core of Census Tract 10. I mean, it goes all the way over to, I believe, Highway 30, Boone, like you're going to go to Nevada, and we have not ever gone over there for our CDBG funds because we just focus on the residential side of it. I'm not aware that that portion of Census Tract 10 has any potential changes other than being residential.
So if there was, just hypothetically, if an area was primed for redevelopment, then the water mains, sewer pipes, all of that stuff's going to be changed out if there was redevelopment, right? I think so. I sort of answered my own question.
Right.
And so I just want to make sure that we're investing in parts of town that we don't see a near future potential for intensifying density.
And what kind of redevelopment would you be? Okay.
Vanessa doesn't spend a lot of time on zoning issues. So this Oak Riverside neighborhood, so we're down by O'Neill Park is
Right.
what we're talking about. So in the comp plan, that area north of 4th Street up to Lincoln Way is shown as is. It's called an RN2 designation, which is an existing neighborhood designation, which is usually a mix of low and a little bit of medium density, which is exactly what Oak Riverside is. So we don't show anything in that area. And I wouldn't expect, because of the street pattern, we have a very gridded street pattern here. If, let's say, in someday in the future, there was some assemblage of land and we chose to allow for redevelopment, I don't see streets going away. The water mains, the sewer mains, all of those utility resources would stay as is, and they would just have to serve new development that is going in on private property.
And so I don't want to take more time on this, but if there was redevelopment, wouldn't it have to be increased in size to service a larger number of units?
I doubt it. The
Okay.
standard mains, we're doing 8-inch mains, water mains, that serves hundreds of units. Residential demand does not usually dictate 12 and 16-inch lines unless you're talking about major trunk loop lines that serve really big areas. That would not be this.
Okay, great.
That'd be stuff you'd see in 4th Street and Lincoln Way, not in the neighborhoods.
Great. This answers my question. Thank you so much.
Well, and conversely, it's 4-inch main now, which we know is not going to be suitable for any kind of
Absolutely. Like you
Sure.
could, yeah, wouldn't be able to meet fire protection requirements. If you were to intensify, you wouldn't have fire flows to meet fire sprinkling requirements and hydrant pressure. So this really just reinforces the quality of the neighborhood. And if there ever was change, this would be your typical expectation for infrastructure.
Yeah, my point, Gloria, was that if there was redevelopment, then the developer would pick up those costs. So that's just all I was concerned about. Thanks.
Yep, you're welcome.
Yes, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, then can entertain a motion on one of the alternatives.
Move alternative one.
Second.
Alternative 1, direct staff to proceed with amending the 2025-26 CDBG Annual Action Plan with the proposed projects as outlined in Attachment 1 and set a date of public hearing for April 14th, 2026. And roll call.
Garten,
Aye.
Betcher,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Rollins,
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Public Works team approaches staff table with presentation about bids.
Okay, moving on to hearings. Number 45, hearing on Resource Recovery and Recycling Campus.
Good evening again, Council. Tonight in front of you, we have the report of bids for the R3C that we received earlier this week. There's a lot of information in this council action form. So I really want to just kind of distill it down to some specific steps here for you. What we're really looking for tonight is to report the bids to you, open the hearing, ask you to close the hearing, and then delay award until the next council meeting on the 24th of March. So a bit of background on March 3rd, we had 11 bid packages for this project. We had 28 total bidders. We went into that bid day with a bid estimate of around $16.8 million. And once bids were open, as you can see, 19.6 were the results. So we were over budget at that point in time. And in a larger perspective of what that means from the revenues we have available in the budget for the R3C construction, and this is without the paving of Friel Drive and without the purchasing of the trucks and trailers, is around $22 million. When we look at the bids that we received and the expenditures that we have, and the expenditures also include things such as the final design, the construction manager, the construction testing, that sort of stuff. We had expenditures of $24.5 million, and all told, we have a shortfall of $2.5 million. So we have to find a way to make up that amount. What you have on the screen here is a rather exhaustive list. I'm not going to go through these one by one. They're listed in your council action form, but we put it up there to show we're already doing this right now. There's a lot of value engineering that's happening at this very moment. These things we're looking at what are must-haves in the project, what are would-be nice-to-have items, and is it really necessary? And then we're looking at things that might be some aesthetics that maybe make sense to do some changes or even some equipment modifications that can still accomplish the goals of this project, still get us something that we can be proud of and something that's going to do what we need to do with our solid waste, but do it maybe at a little bit different cost. And so I'm going to highlight these here and show you that out of these 29 items on the screen, there's 2 of them that we really aren't considering right now. Those 2, I want to bring those up because they're removing the 2 ECS, which are the eddy current separators. So that's what takes out the non-ferrous metal. The non-ferrous metal has a very high value for resale. It's something that's very important to our revenue streams. And also the option of remove all the processing equipment. That is the kind of thought process of, in case of fire, break the glass. And we don't want to do that because a lot of what we've done over 50 years is process waste. There's revenue in this waste material that we get out of it. So we're looking at different ways of doing it. But ultimately, again, what we're asking council for here is to accept the report of bids, open the hearing, delay the award until March 24th. This will allow us to finalize a lot of these options that we're already working on. We're already receiving some pricing, and at the same time, bring back to council on the 24th some options for award, and at the same time, some deductive change orders that we can do. We can bring this thing back into the budget. So addition to that, we may ask council for a special meeting shortly after that. And the reason for that is if we can award contracts and we can get signed contracts back with the bonds from the contractors, it's as council's aware, it's very critical we start this project as quickly as possible. But we want to make sure we do it right. So if there are contracts that are ready to go, especially some of the earthwork, some of the other stuff that needs to happen right away, we might ask you for a special meeting to consider those contracts and award at that point in time. So I'm happy to take any questions on the award of bids or anything that you have tonight. Excuse me, the report of bids, not award.
So I'll start. So this isn't, I mean, this happens. So I don't think I don't feel like the sky is falling here. But I am curious, did we do the engineering internally or did we outsource the engineering for the bid?
So all the engineering and the estimating was all, there's two companies. So HCR out of Omaha provided some engineering estimates, and also Story Construction, our construction manager, did as well.
And so they've had a chance to look at these bids. Do they look at the bids and say, wow, we really underestimated this? Or did they have any kind of response for us? Because that'd be super helpful.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that probably went on that explain some of it. The first thing is there are a number of bid packages that only had one bidder. And that's kind of a challenge when we don't have a lot of competition. Now, leading up to bid day, talking with Story Construction, they had numerous bidders that were interested in the work. Unfortunately, they can tell you they're interested, but on bid day, if they ultimately don't submit a bid, that's kind of a challenge to really see what happens there. So that's one part of it. Another part of it, we heard some feedback that our use of liquidated damages in the project might have turned some contractors off. And while it may be the case, I think it's also important for us that the end dates are so critical on this project, we have to protect ourselves a little bit. So there may be some of that has some impact. The further thing that I would say too is if you look at the individual bid packages, the ones that have a very well-defined scope, things such as electrical, such as plumbing, such as paving, the bids are really tight on some of those. And the reason for that is this is all work that those contractors do on a regular basis, right? They're putting in electrical into a pre-engineered building. The ones that are probably a little bit farther outside are things that we haven't built this before, right? Ours is a one-of-a-kind unit. You don't go around the country and build R3Cs necessarily. So there's some risk, there's some unknowns of what that looks like. Some of the processing equipment, we designed it around very specific pieces of equipment. And we're finding out that there may be some alternatives out there that might suit the best or suit the same purpose, but might be a better price for us right now. So I think some of that's coming to light right now. So some of it all put together, and then if you take one more factor into that, and that is the speed at which we put this together. A design like this it's a 8-9 month process, and we squeezed it into about 4 months. And part of that is because we've got a hard end date at the back end of when we're going to be done with Boone County. Our date there is June 30th of 2027. So we've got to get this built in that time frame. So we're pushing that all together in one point, and I think a few of those things caught us on bid day.
And are you going to be recommending that we rebid any of these packages?
Right now today, I don't believe so. From what we've reviewed, we think there's some opportunities to get this back into budget or very close to it. I don't know that we would receive more bids and or better bids if we did so. So I don't believe I would recommend that.
And then it's been a while since we've had this exact conversation. This is very important that none of us have a technical expertise on these things. And so I would want you to do what you can to a way it makes sense. But at some point, you cross a line where you're compromising the project. And if we needed to increase the scope of the cost of this, then I think we need to take a look at that. But do what you're doing. I commend what you're doing, but at some point, don't compromise the project.
Yeah, we're taking a hard look at the components of the project that we can modify or use an alternative means that might be more customary in order to provide what was designed into the project. There were a couple of items that may have required some specialty work rather than something that's off the shelf. So those are the kinds of things that we're looking at. We're also identifying, as Justin mentioned, a few things that had we had some more time to go through the design really thoroughly, we would have caught and we would have eliminated from the project anyway, or reconfigured or done slightly differently. So I don't think I don't think any of the things that we're considering, apart from the two options that were not highlighted, which are the options that we would recommend if we can't get if we can't do all these other things and get the project to within a reasonable amount, those are the two that we would go to consider. But taking out or adjusting these items that are highlighted, we don't think has a meaningful impact on how the facility would operate or the efficiency of it or the safety certainly or any of those factors.
Okay, thanks.
Isn't so much a question as just it's meant to be sort of a response to Andrew Giles, is it, who requested that we consider kind of an even more robust sorting system, right? And just the constraints of funding, I mean, is really what it comes down to. Like a lot of maybe the places he's familiar with, or certainly other places in the world, have different funding mechanisms and different available funding for a thing of this type. And so that would just be kind of my response to him, if he's still watching, is just that we're already looking at huge overages, and our project's not even that complicated, but we're really fiscally constrained here, especially in this state, in this time. And so anyway, just wanted to point that out. Again, not a question for staff, but just a discussion point.
Just want to clarify, you talk about the two eddy currents, but you didn't want, did you mean actually you wouldn't remove both of them, but you could remove one of them?
Right. So one of the
I want to make sure they
one of the
understand.
options that's right in the middle of that middle column is remove one of the eddy current
Right.
separators and shorten the conveyors. So the design that was put out on the street for bids contains two eddy current separators, one in series after the other. And the purpose of that is to clean up the product, the non-ferrous metal product, to increase its value even more, so we can recover more revenue from that stream. In conversations that we've had initially with the equipment contractor who would be putting this all together, procuring the equipment and putting it in, they've indicated that that second eddy current separator may not be all that beneficial to us, and it's a considerable cost. So that's an area where we believe we can eliminate one eddy current separator, shorten a very expensive conveyor, reduce the cost of all of that processing equipment considerably, by several hundred thousand dollars, and essentially get a pretty similar product without much loss in potential revenue.
Right.
So
Just wanted to
we've
clarify,
done
you
the
might
math
have
on
focused on that one.
Correct. Right. So another option, more extreme, would be that we eliminate both eddy current separators, and we do not remove any non-ferrous metals. The non-ferrous metals, remember, are a smaller amount of our tonnage, but they have a high value, and it's more material that would be going to the landfill. We don't want to do that. But if there was if there was no other option, that would be something that we would look at. Or the third, or the other direction would be to simply eliminate all the processing equipment entirely and operate as a traditional transfer station.
Again, that's not what we're shooting for.
Right. So we're working on all of those items that are highlighted, and we believe we've had some very productive conversations already with the contractors and with the design team. We think that these items can really make a substantial impact on the budget and get us very close.
Any other questions? Then I will open up the public hearing on the Resource Recovering and Recycling Campus. I will, seeing no one.
Do we move to continue the public hearing, or is that?
We want to close, so we don't have to come back.
Close, okay.
Okay.
So then I now close the public hearing on the Resource Recovering and Recycling Campus. And then the second part is moving to delay the awards. Okay, so then we're looking for a motion then to accept the report of bids and delay the contract awards until March 24th, 2026.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, one question though. Apologize here. Jordison is listed,
That we'll know more about on the 24th.
but how does that affect?
That will come first. The issue about Jorgensen will have to be on the agenda first, and this would follow that.
Okay, just want to be clear.
I think we provide some guidance to you following your discussion. We'll have some options for you.
Okay.
Good question.
Okay. So it's been moved and seconded to accept the report of bids and delay the contract awards until March 24th, 2026. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on to item number 46, hearing on 2025-2026 alley pavement improvement program south of Lincoln Way between South Kellogg Avenue and South Sherman Avenue.
What you have next 3 items for you here, Council, are some reported bids. The bids all came in well, so I'm happy to answer any questions you have on any of those. Otherwise, I think the council action just as accepting bids and approving final plans and specs and awarding the contractors.
Okay. Any questions for Justin? Well, then I will declare the hearing open on this item. Motion accepting reported bids. This is related to the 25-26 alley pavement improvement program south of Lincoln Way between Kellogg Avenue and South Sherman Avenue. Seeing no one, closing the hearing. Any discussion? And if not, we can accept.
I
the
move we
motion.
accept the report of bids.
Second.
All those, all those in favor indicate sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Resolution approving final plans and specifications and awarding a contract to Brothers Concrete of Des Moines, Iowa in the amount of $116,833.30.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Fetcher,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Okay, moving on to item number 47, hearing on 25-26 Downtown Street Pavement Improvement Program, the alley north of Lincoln Way between Kellogg Avenue and Sherman Avenue. Any questions for staff? I'll open public hearing on this item. Does anyone wish to speak? I'll then close the public hearing. Any discussion? Otherwise, entertain a motion to accept the report of bids.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the report of bids. All those in favor indicate by sign of aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Part B, resolution approving final plans and specifications and awarding a contract to Brothers Concrete of Des Moines in the amount of $127,917.05.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Junk,
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Fetcher.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 48, hearing on 25-26 Seal Code Street Pavement Improvements Program and Water System Improvements Program, Ferndale Avenue and Furman Drive. Motion accepting report of bids. I will open up the public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, I will close public input. Any questions for Justin? Okay. We'll accept a motion to accept the report of bids.
So moved. Second.
Okay, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Resolution approving final plans and specifications and awarding a contract to Iowa Water and Waste Systems of Boone, Iowa in the amount of $1,977,694.58.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Fetcher.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Motion carries. We already did 49. The one I started off with. So, okay, we will move on to the ordinances. Number 50. This is the first reading of an ordinance to amend the municipal code of the City of Ames, Iowa by enacting a new section 2421 thereof for the purpose of creating tax increment financing districts within the downtown reinvestment district urban renewal area. Kelly, what do you want to share?
Yeah, very quickly, last meeting, we listed off a number of upcoming urban renewal area requests, and we identified that the Link site, which has been discussed for many years, was already part of the Downtown Reinvestment District urban renewal area, and it'd be the easiest one to implement as quick as possible in terms of trying to balance our workload. So tonight, what we're looking at is we ended up proposing 2 separate TIP districts. We believe that could assist in phasing of incentives in the future. We may or may not need to have 2, but there's no harm in having 2 so we can address phasing if necessary. Tonight, if you approve this, it'll be first reading. There'll be 2 more readings before it's an effective ordinance. It does not commit any particular dollar value of incentive to anyone. It really just establishes the mechanism that's necessary to grant an incentive in the future.
Does it create a potential for more dollar value than one large TIF district would do?
I'd say theoretically, yes. That would be because you are delaying the capture of increment from a very large area if that second area isn't being built upon.
Sure. But
so
through phasing it.
Through phasing, correct.
It does. I see.
So that would, a lot of variables there, but I guess theoretically by having more, you're allowing to do smaller amounts more times rather than one large amount.
Was that the intent?
That's, yeah, for phasing, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's the reason you would do that.
Any other questions? I'll open public comment. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'll close public comment and entertain a motion.
Alternative 1.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Roll call.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye. Item number 51, first reading of ordinance revising Municipal Code Chapters 10, 17, 21, 22, and 27 relating to licenses and permits issued by the Office of the City Clerk.
No presentation. Those were suggested changes,
Okay.
cleanup items, if you will, suggested by the city clerk and the staff. So
Okay.
I think they're minor changes, don't change.
This is the one we already discussed, right? So we've seen it and given input.
Then you
So-
set it up, set it as first reading.
Yeah, so I would move on first.
Okay.
Second.
Roll call.
Garten.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Motion carries. Number 52, second reading of ordinance revising Municipal Code Chapter 28 for water meter setting requirements.
Move on second.
Second.
Roll call.
Betcher.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Item 53, third reading and adoption of ordinance number 4589, renaming Center Avenue to Chantlin Avenue.
Move on third.
Second.
Roll call.
Junk.
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Item 54, third reading and adoption of ordinance number 4588, modifying Municipal Code Chapter 10, Garbage and Refuse, continued from February 24th, 2026.
Move on third.
Second.
Roll call.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Garten.
Aye.
Betcher.
Aye.
Junk.
Aye.
Motion carried. We'll move on to disposition of communications to council. And we have first item, Mark McClure, Ames resident, related
That was related to the rezoning.
rezoning.
Action's already been taken. So
Yeah, I guess I would move that we communicate our thanks for the input and let this resident know just sort of the next step in, like, it would be the next step in the planning for that property, so they know when to pay attention again.
Okay.
Well, I would add to that, we responded to that concern. So I mean, I think in the letter, you can tell them what our thoughts on
Yep.
this issue.
You responded to that concern?
Didn't we address this?
Those that
I asked about it.
You asked about, I don't think we addressed it.
Right.
This is just on,
There was an answer given.
Yeah, there was an answer given. That's
that's what I'm saying,
Yeah, we just
We-
thank them and we ask the question for them.
right? But
Mhm.
I would like to give the answer that came out of the discussion tonight.
Well, it
Would
wasn't
that
really
be
our
good?
answer. It was the school district's answer and the architect's answer.
Are you talking about, the storm sewer or issue or the
Mhm.
traffic or?
But it was
storm.
accepted by our staff.
Right, Northwestern Avenue rezoning.
I'm just trying to give a substantive response rather than thanks for your email.
Well, yeah, and I was just gonna let them know when the topic, or to tell them when the topic would be
Yeah,
up again.
watch the meeting.
Keep an eye out.
So is this one that the staff could respond about the rezoning? Would that be enough?
I think they want past the rezoning,
I
right?
think, yeah, what
Past the
Kelly,
rezoning.
We could
what
provide
Kelly
them with the
mentioned was
answer
the
that was provided to
stormwater,
us tonight.
stormwater ordinance review, the compliance with
Mhm.
Yeah,
stormwater requirements.
stormwater requirements, we can take out the minutes and,
Yeah.
And make a,
exactly.
make
Just
a
provide
response.
Yeah, yeah.
The
Mhm.
answer that we were given.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do we need a motion for that?
yeah, why don't you do it so it gets on the referral list,
Okay.
referral list?
I'll withdraw my earlier motion and I will move that we respond to the person who wrote and to tell them or give them the answer that was provided to us tonight about their inquiry.
Those usually go to the,
Second.
you write those for the mayor. Taylor, is that what you usually do?
Sure.
So it's referred to the,
Yeah,
it's the mayor.
the
that
mayor
responds.
responds. Yeah.
We'll be ready
Okay.
for it.
Okay, perfect. Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Opposed?
second one, I have a suggestion for you. I know the students have some good ideas for maybe working on the Lincoln Way project, and we appreciate that. But rather than have a meeting with you, I think it'd be more appropriate to refer that to the Public Works Department. Justin can contact them, and I'm sure they'll sit down. If there's any good ideas, they'll take it under consideration. So I think more appropriate, we should be Public Works and the traffic people.
I would move that we refer that to Public Works.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item number 3 from a resident concerned about trailer parking requirements.
We had a very robust discussion about this. It's been years now, or a couple years about it. And it's, council's dealt with this policy, so I don't know if you want to change the policy or not.
I would move that we communicate that we aren't interested in changing our trailer parking
action.
policies
Yeah.
at this
No
time.
action at this time.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, motion carried. Looking at some comments from Ames residents regarding recycling. I don't know if we just taking those under advisement as part of our discussion.
Mhm.
No action unless.
I would move
someone
we
moves
take
it.
no action on those.
Okay. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Second. Okay, moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by aye.
Aye.
Sarah Van Meteren, related to rental housing code topics. Is there any guidance on that?
There were 3 of them. I remember the paving in the driveway, the connection to the sump into the streets, and what was the other one? I forgot.
Yeah.
She responded
Handrails.
to. Pardon me?
And handrail.
Oh, handrails, that's right.
Mhm.
So you've already received the memo now. Now you got to decide whether you want to take no action, you want to put on the agenda, on the future council agenda.
Steve, do you have a recommendation on this?
I don't believe we want to recommend any changes, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
I would move that we take no action on this.
Could we, second friendly amendment, could we provide this memo to the
Yes.
respondent?
Yes.
If it
Sorry, I
hasn't
mean,
been-
that's, I guess, I was assuming that there would be contact saying, this is what we got. So,
Okay.
yes.
So Moved and seconded not to take action, but respond back to the individual that provided the communication. All those in favor indicate by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And then item from Stephen Ann Bergeson, request for revision to Ansley Subdivision Cedar Lane Agreement.
I think you want to refer that to staff on that, or a memo back.
I would move for a memo from staff on that.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by aye.
Aye. As part of that memo, Steve, would that would involve, I mean, I assume Steve Bergeson is in on these conversations. He would like, that you had some questions about how much of an incentive he was requesting. Like, we would clarify that with him.
Okay, I was just going to go by what his letter said.
The most recent letter.
Do you think he offered something else, or should I just, I'm assuming what he wrote is what he wants, or has it changed?
I think the thing we don't know is the amounts, and so staff could provide how much it would cost to do the Aurora project versus how much it was costing for Cedar Lane. At least I was assuming that's what.
I don't know if he offered you something differently, like he wants to make a dollar for dollar switch, or he just wanted to switch the projects, and one may cost more.
I think that was up.
You talked to him
That
more
was
about
up
it.
for negotiation.
Oh, okay. We can offer that as kind of an option too, right?
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah, just refer to memo and we'll try to figure it out.
Yeah. Sounds good.
And again, the timing on this, we can't possibly do this till the second year. We can't do this 26, 27 anyway. So, there's a little bit of time. Not that we're going to wait to respond that long.
Sure.
Did we vote? Okay, all right, thank you. All right, moving on to number 55, participation.
Did we vote on
We
that
didn't
one?
vote.
Oh, that's what, did we not vote? I'm sorry. Okay,
I thought we did too, but I could.
yeah, it's okay. We voted a lot.
Voting.
All right. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor of this going to staff can indicate by a sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carried. All right, now moving on to report of governing bodies and the participation within agencies, boards, and commissions. Discover Ames. Any new things?
I don't think we have
haven't met.
anything. No,
We haven't met since
we
last
won't
time.
have another meeting till April.
Okay, all right. Ames Regional Economic Alliance.
I went to the meeting that was before the housing summit. They had that presenter who is the basically like the state's chamber person, lobbyist. And he gave a really interesting presentation on all the different proposals that are out there right now for the property tax reform. Like the Senate's version, the House's version, the governor's version, and a really interesting presentation on TIF too, like TIF usage in our area. And he was, it was just really, I learned a lot. And he was also pretty, I would say, like what would you say, positive about our TIF usage. So he commended all of the communities that he mentioned that are in our area for really like responsible and I would say we're like responsible and restrained use of TIF. We're not the communities that the state is trying to like rein in TIF usage because of. Anyway, I thought that was good to hear. So,
So I attended the housing summit, even though I'm not on the Alliance board anymore. And I did provide all of you with folders in your mailboxes that outlined some of the presentations that were given.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. Story County Emergency Management Agency.
Well, I filled in for the mayor on this, and I was surprised it was a bit of a contested meeting. And so who knew that putting in audio-visual equipment in the basement of the administrative building would be so contentious, but we had a very robust conversation, all very civil, and voted ultimately to put in some new equipment that's needed for this facility. That's all.
Okay. Ames Transit Agency Board of Trustees.
We meet next week, so no updates till the 24th.
Okay, all right, thank you. Council comments. Emily, you want to kick us off?
Okay, so
We have a few things tonight. President Cook started last week, so I want to say welcome to President Cook and First Lady Katie Cook, Dr. Katie Cook. They both graduated from ISU and called Ames home growing up, so that's pretty cool. And then additionally, the student government elections wrapped up last week. Senator Brody Kuzi and our nonprofit coordinator Nolan Clemisrud will be inaugurated on the 6th of April. They've already connected with me and been very proactive about ensuring a smooth transition for whoever steps into the role after me. My final regular city council meeting is the next one, March 24th. And I've been working behind the scenes just to document all of my stuff for the past 2 years. I'm hopeful that the next person can have a running start from that information that I've collected. And I'll be around to help support them until I graduate in May, as long as they're appointed. And then that being said, with the appointments and going through the Senate and whatnot, once they've selected their person, it's probably best to contact Nolan and Brody about the timelines for all that stuff because I won't know. And then for the April SciRide meeting, I will still be there for the April SciRide meeting, and then I am done before the May one. So that'll be my last SciRide meeting. And I've talked to the appropriate parties within the legislative branch and executive branch about ensuring that we can get the SciRide nominee and the ex officio nominee up before the end of the legislative session, which will be, I think, 2 weeks before finals week. So it'll come fast before we know it, probably, honestly. So, yeah.
You're gonna have some time on your hands.
Yeah. I don't know what I'm going to do.
Probably.
Emily, will the asset representative, is that Nolan who's
Yes.
taking over as vice president, right?
Yes, he'll be vice president.
And do you know whether he will be continuing with asset in that role or whether they will replace him?
I'm not sure what that will look like. The nonprofit coordinator role it's different in our bylaws. There's some ways where we can work around where you can be a senator and be the nonprofit coordinator and things like that. So I will work on checking with him on that, but if not, it'll be good that he'll be there to help with coordinating some of that and continue working with the asset board because the vice president is required to work with them also beyond just the nonprofit coordinator and the other liaisons. So I'm hopeful that it'll be a pretty smooth transition with that too.
Tim, anything?
So a couple quick things tonight. Sunday was an absolutely gorgeous day and had a chance to get out to try to find a place to play pickleball. It was impossible to find a place to play pickleball on Sunday afternoon. So I'm anticipating the pickleball lobbyists will be knocking on our door. But it was great to see our facilities being used. I talked to a neighbor at the agility course, and he lives right across the street, and he said that agility course is being used all the time. So it's just fun as we make investments in our infrastructure that people are using them. And then I have to mark this was Taman Lipsey's last home game as a senior. Has been a great ambassador for our community. Very proud of his performance, stand-up class act, and we will miss him and wish the Iowa State men's basketball team the best. Tomorrow they start Big 12 tournament 11:30. So go Cyclones. That's it.
Nothing for me, thanks.
Nothing for me.
I don't think I have anything either.
Okay. Well, I just wanted to bring forward the item related to 624 Duff with the tree that everyone got a report from staff about to see if you all would be willing to refer that to a future agenda, specifically to talk about if there's anything that we would want to do to try to help the homeowners at that location, but also to look at notification kind of procedures and just so we can understand better what that's like. So I'm moving that we would put that item on a future agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. All
And we're,
those.
we're assuming then that the email that we got explaining the situation is enough information to feed into the agenda item. Okay.
Yes, if everyone's okay with that. Okay, I will, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. And Mark, you are ready. So do we have permission to go into closed session?
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem, you do. Iowa Code Section 21.51C allows the council to go into closed session to discuss matters that are in litigation or where litigation is imminent.
Okay, we'll have roll call then.
I would
Oh,
move that we go
move
into
first,
closed
sorry.
session.
Second.
Moved and seconded, thank you. Now roll call.
Beatty Hansen,
Aye.
Garten,
Aye.
Fetcher,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Title card, closed session, Ames City Council.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve the resolution related to the settlement agreement?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call.
Garten,
Aye.
Fetcher,
Aye.
Junk,
Aye.
Rollins.
Aye.
Beatty Hansen.
Aye.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Good job.
Ames City Council. Credits.